Chapter 773. Although Lin Qiao responded with a smile, she did not return the other's hand. She was actually telling the other party that their statuses were not the same. Even if Ho Guizhong was a rank 7 metahuman, he was still a weakling in her eyes, not to mention that this person was only a vice leader. It was polite for her to respond, but if she were to extend her hand to return the handshake, it would be lowering her status. Let's go and see your leader. Tell me about your situation. Wu Qingyue smiled and nodded at Ho Guizhong, but his feet did not stop moving forward. Ho Guizhong automatically moved aside and took a step back to follow beside the two of them. The situation is not good, our soldiers and metahumans have not rested for a month. The death toll is not high, but the number of injured is not small. The zombie tide has been attacking continuously, we do not know when they will retreat. Ho Guizhong said with a serious expression. You should know the reason for the appearance of the zombie tide, right? Did you not think of any other way to solve the problem? Wu Qingyue asked curiously. Everyone knew that the reason was within the zombies. For the zombie tide to be able to last for so long, it must have been ordered or controlled. If he didn't find out who was the one controlling the corpse tide wouldn't retreat. Our leader felt that the zombie tide is related to the moving thunderclouds, but the people we sent to investigate were unable to find any information about the minefield. Moreover, the people we sent out are all dead. Even one of our directors with a rank 7 ability has not returned yet, Ho Guizhong said with a sigh. Lin Qiao and Wu Qingyue looked at each other. It seems like it has been a long time. China still has not found out that the zombie tide was caused by Mo Yen. How do you know that the zombie tide is related to the thunderclouds? Wu Qingyue asked curiously while walking. Ho Guizhong replied while leading the way, because when the thunderclouds appear, the zombie tide will change. The zombies will become crazy and attack fiercely. If the thunderclouds disappear, they will slow down a little, but they will not retreat. Just like now, the thunderclouds have just disappeared, the zombie tide should slow down a little. As he spoke, he entered the command building and walked for a while before arriving at the command room. Of course, only Lin Qiao and Wu Qingyue could enter. The other two could only bring one subordinate with them. As soon as they entered the command room, everyone standing in front of the big screen turned around to look at them. You're only here now. Leader Wu, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Si Kong Qin, who had been expressionless all this while, casually said when he saw Wu Qingyue. The expression on his face didn't change, and his eyes were so deep that no one could tell what he was thinking. But when he saw Lin Qiao beside Wu Qingyue, his eyes flickered. When the others saw Lin Qiao, they were all stunned. Gao Haoyun, who was standing next to Si Kong Qin, looked at Lin Qiao with great interest. With an ambiguous smile, he said, Yo, is this Leader Wu's girlfriend? As soon as he said that, the others looked at Lin Qiao and Wu Qingyue with dubious gazes. Lin Qiao smiled calmly, but when he looked at Gao Haoyun, a fierce look flashed across his eyes. There was no sound. Wu Qingyue slightly frowned and said with a faint smile, although I really wanted to introduce her to everyone, she didn't agree to it. But I think everyone already knows who she is, so I won't introduce her. When Gao Haoyun heard this, his eyes lit up. With a bright smile, he looked at Lin Qiao and said, Oh, is that so? If that's the case, then everyone has a chance. Although you may know my name, let me introduce myself. But let me introduce myself. My name is Gao Haoyun, level 8 Arcanist, Ice Element. Originally, when he heard about this woman in the Black Dragon base, he didn't pay much attention. But now that he saw her, his thoughts changed. He didn't expect the female leader of this new base to be so young. She looked to be around 22 or 23 years old. She had a beautiful oval face, a pair of bright green eyes, a sharp nose, and pale but moist lips. Her straight black hair was straight to her waist, and 2 strands were scattered on both sides of her slender neck, casually hanging in front of her towering chest. Under the black military cloak was a slender waist, and a pair of slender, straight, and smooth legs. Her calm temperament made her look cold and elegant, making people unable to move their eyes away. A beautiful face, a perfect body, and a cold temperament. Such a beautiful woman, any man who saw her would want to tear off her solemn and proper military uniform, and fiercely press her down to admire her beautiful face as she held back her tears. Especially in this post-apocalyptic world where women were lacking, who wouldn't want such a beautiful woman who stood at the same height as them? Everyone present was a leader-level character. Even if they had any bad thoughts after seeing a beautiful woman, they wouldn't show it on their faces. It was just that each and every one of their hidden gazes allowed Lin Qiao to sense their mentality. Other than Wu Qingyue and Sikong Qin, who Lin Qiao couldn't see through, Gao Haoyun's gaze was too obvious. The highest level of the others was only 7th level, so Lin Qiao only needed to look at them to know what they were thinking. Hee, a group of perverts. That's right, the original owner's body was indeed more fiery than Lin Qiao's. Moreover, her appearance was slightly more beautiful, and more importantly, she was younger. She knew that her current body's appearance would attract a lot of covetous eyes, otherwise, the original owner wouldn't have been able to survive until now. She could even use the tiger's might to cause trouble in Sea City base. That was why she was so low-key when she wasn't strong. But that didn't mean that now that she was out, she would become the target of these men. Lin Qiao smiled faintly, looking at Gao Haoyun without saying anything. Someone next to her spoke. I didn't expect Leader Lu to be so young. We thought that a leader would at least be an old woman in her 30s like Nether Flame. One of China's directors, Hu Zhiyong, stared at her and said with a rippling smile. Lin Qiao, who was called an old woman at the age of 32, was speechless. Sigh, although she's already in her 30s, her body is still maintained quite well. It's a pity that she was forced to death by Earth Dragon Base and Hidden Cloud City. In any case, she's still a beauty. Lu Jinan said with a face of pity. Wu Qingyue's expression became more and more indifferent as he listened, his crescent moon-like eyes gradually opened. There was a faint flash of cold light in them. These people unscrupulously stared at the female zombie with such an evil gaze, and even compared her to a dead person. This made Wu Qingyue's heart rise with a hint of anger. Chapter 774. Looks like you guys aren't worried about the zombies outside breaking through your defense line. You still have the mood to admire the beauty. Wu Qingyue stepped forward and blocked half of Lin Qiao's body behind him. He said to Lu Jinan and the others with a smile. It was obvious that he was mocking them for having such unscrupulous thoughts at this time. Although Wu Qingyue's face was smiling, his actions showed his strong desire to possess Lin Qiao. These people stared at Lin Qiao with greedy eyes, making him want to dig out their eyes. The anger in his heart was burning, but he did not show it on his face. Yes, Leader Wu is reluctant to let her go. But she did not agree with you. Everyone here has the right to chase after the beauty, right? Gao Haoyun stared at Lin Qiao's face and smiled. It seems like the Ice Demon leader does not care about the destruction of his base. Wu Qingyue smiled and looked at Gao Haoyun. Ice Demon was Gao Haoyun's title, just like Lin Qiao's Hellfire. It was because he was an ice elemental, a rank 8 ice elemental. If he really did not want to let go of the Black Dragon base, it would not have been destroyed by the zombie tide so quickly. Gao Haoyun's expression froze, but he quickly returned to normal. He pretended to be sad. How can I not care? That is the base that I built with my own hands, and now it has been swallowed by the zombie tide. Hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost. I am also sad. But I heard that the Black Dragon base has a lot of troubles, and Du Kuanxing has been the one to solve them. Moreover, he has not given up on your base, and is still trying to survive in the underground base. At this time, Lin Qiao suddenly stepped to the side and walked out from behind Wu Qingyue. She said to Gao Haoyun with a smile. Her smile was different from Wu Qingyue's. Wu Qingyue's smile was moist and elegant, like a warm spring breeze. On the other hand, Lin Qiao's smile was cold and indifferent. It was not exactly a sneer, but it was a smile with a bit of arrogance. There was a hint of cheerfulness, and it made people feel comfortable, but it was impossible to ignore her pressure. Lin Qiao's expression was calm, and her smile was elegant. However, her words were like a knife stabbing into Gao Haoyun's heart and a slap to his face. That's right, Du Kuansheng was the one who truly cared about the Black Dragon base. Although Du Kuansheng's character was somewhat sinister and cunning, his starting point was for the sake of his base. He had put in a lot of effort for the Black Dragon base, which was why the survivors of the Black Dragon base had a stable shelter. However, in the eyes of outsiders, they only saw the powerful Gao Haoyun. In this post-apocalyptic world, strength was everything. People respected the strong, and the strongest person would naturally become the leader. However, not every leader would do their best for the survivors of the base. As for Gao Haoyun, he didn't care much about the situation of the survivors in the Black Dragon base. He only cared about his private army and subordinates. However, he didn't want outsiders to know about this. In any case, people thought that he was strong, and he was the leader of the Black Dragon base. He had the ability to stand with these leaders. However, after hearing what Lin Qiao said, he felt that his disguise had been exposed, and he felt slightly inferior in front of these people. Du Kuansheng is only doing what he should do. Is there a problem? Gao Haoyun's eyes flashed with a fierce light, but he quickly concealed it. He looked at Lin Qiao with a faint smile, and his eyes couldn't help but sweep up and down her delicate body. That's right. Among the leaders here, the Ice Demon leader is the most relaxed. Unlike us, although we are leaders, we have to be responsible for every survivor in the base. It's really worrisome. Lin Qiao smiled as she looked at Gao Haoyun. Everyone could see that she was only a rank 7 metahuman, but she was fearless against the rank 8 metahuman, Gao Haoyun. Her aura wasn't any weaker than the people here. Moreover, there was a faint feeling that Gao Haoyun was going to be weaker, but they didn't know if it was an illusion. At this time, Wu Qingyue took another step forward, and silently shielded half of Lin Qiao's body behind him. He smiled and said, I just asked Vice Leader Ho from Huaxia. You guys seem to have not figured out the cause of the zombie tide. I thought Leader Gao was already here, so you guys should at least know the reason for the zombie tide. Wu Qingyue's words successfully made Gao Haoyun's expression stiffen again. What do you mean? Xikong Chen, who had been expressionless, narrowed his eyes. He glanced at Gao Haoyun before looking at Wu Qingyue with doubt. I think Leader Xikong doesn't need to ask, you should know in your heart. Stand to the side, can you stop blocking in front of me? Lin Qiao sneered at Xikong Chen as she raised her hand and pushed Wu Qingyue to the side. This person had completely blocked her aura by pushing her back, okay? This made her very unhappy. She had always been the one to protect others and didn't need others to protect her. Being protected like this made her feel weak. Wu Qingyue turned around and looked at her with a sullen expression. I just don't want you to be seen by others, ungrateful female zombie. Duan Wan, who was behind Lin Qiao, also had a cold expression, but her face was calm as if she was used to it. In the past, Lin Qiao was also like this. Wherever she went, the first thing she would face would be the vulgar and disgusting gazes of these men. But soon, these people would know that her boss could only watch from afar. If he wanted to press her under his body and play with her, it would depend on whether he had the life to do so. Just as the atmosphere in the Hua Xia command room became a little tense due to the arrival of Wu Qingyue and Lin Qiao, on the other side of the thundercloud, a few figures flashed. Roar! A zombie with a face full of purplish-green bloodstreaks bared its teeth and twisted its terrifying face. He stood on the ruins, surrounded by black smoke and flames, as if it had been blown up by countless grenades. It was a terrible sight to behold. The ferocious-looking zombie slightly bent its back. Its 10 black nails were about 5 to 6 centimeters long, shining with a cold light. The ground beneath his feet spread outwards. Within a few hundred meters of the square garden, the surrounding buildings and trees were all destroyed, turning into pieces of broken walls and tiles. Traces of black ash from the fire could be seen everywhere. This zombie had a powerful and brutal aura around it, making the high-level zombies a few hundred meters away from it to be careful. It seemed like if something went wrong, these level 1 and level 2 king-level zombies would instantly turn around and run away. Roar dash! At this time, the brutal zombie slightly straightened its body, raised its head and roared softly. But its voice was a little weak and unstable. A white shadow quickly flashed to its side, raised its hand and pressed on its shoulder. A white light began to shine along with that hand. Chapter 775. The berserk zombies slowly calmed down under the power of the female zombie in the white dress. He raised his head, and the veins on his face were wriggling strangely. Under his bangs, a pair of black eyes flashed with purple light, reflecting a fierce and cruel look. Except for the level 5 zombies in the white dress, the other zombies still didn't dare to come close. Mo Yen panted heavily as he raised his head and looked around. He realized that one of the rank 1st kings was missing. There were still 5 level 2nd kings left. Roar dash! Where did he go? Mo Yen roared while he was panting. His voice carried an irresistible pressure. After he asked, the other zombies slightly paused and became much quieter. However, the zombies still didn't dare to come close to him, they just looked at him from afar. Mo Yen looked at them like this and turned his head to look at the female zombie with his horrifying face. The female zombie's body stiffened under his gaze, but she quickly gathered her courage and roared, roar dash. Mo Yen was dazed and looked at her in confusion. She said that her companion was dead. Mo Yen was confused about how that subordinate died. What happened when he had a fit? That's right, Mo Yan's mania was getting fiercer and fiercer recently, and the frequency of it was getting more and more frequent. And every time he woke up, it would always be a mess around him. But he didn't remember anything. The female zombie turned around and looked at the other zombies. The other zombies looked at each other. Then, a 2nd-grade king quietly retreated and quickly disappeared from this place. But not long after, he appeared again. He was holding a corpse in his hand, and the corpse was already burnt. There was a burnt smell, but the zombies couldn't smell it. Mo Yen was shocked when he saw the corpse. What made him shocked was not the corpse's appearance, but the residual power of his power on the corpse. Therefore, this indicated that this subordinate had been killed by his own lightning bolt. He actually killed the subordinates that he had trained with his own hands when he had a fit. Although these subordinates weren't human, they had been with him for 2 to 3 years, they were all his subordinates. Anyway, he wasn't a human anymore, and he hated human beings. Looking at the zombies that had been with him for the longest time dying, Mo Yan's zombie heart was also in pain. Even when the 6 subordinates were kidnapped by the strange zombie not long ago, he didn't feel so much pain. Because he knew that the other party was a female zombie, but he didn't feel any killing intent towards him or his men. Even when he was plotting against her base, the other party didn't reveal any real killing intent. His intuition told him that nothing bad would happen to the zombies that she took away, so he finally gave up on fighting with the female zombie. Anyway, sooner or later he would go back, and at that time he would find a way to get back at her. However, when he saw the lifeless corpse in front of him, his heart sank. His heavy aura had already affected the surrounding zombie kings. All the zombies silently suppressed their breath, and at the same time, they didn't dare to breathe too loudly. However, Mo Yen quickly retracted his aura and slowly walked over to the corpse. The zombies that brought the corpse over had already retreated. His heart ached, but since she was already dead, he could only force himself to accept it. Fortunately, his heart had already hardened a lot, and wouldn't have any more emotions. Even though he had lost a subordinate, and it was even killed by him. In his heart, there was only a little bit of pity, a little bit of heartache, and a little bit of guilt. It was like he had a few obedient dogs, and he really liked them, but one day he accidentally killed one of them. That kind of feeling. Mo Yen walked over to the corpse, squatted down, and sighed. Then he opened his claws and poked the corpse's head with his fingers. Dash, with a slight twist of his wrist, the zombie's head was split open. After taking out the zombie core, he squeezed it in his palm. The zombie core was crushed, and quickly turned into energy that seeped into Mo Yen's palm. Mo Yen stood up, and turned his head to look at the direction of China's base. He felt that there were two new auras over there, and they were the ones that he had encountered not long ago. That female zombie actually came over, interesting. The veins on Mo Yan's face slowly retreated to the left side of his face, and shrunk to the side of his neck and a small part of his face. A light flashed in his eyes. He turned his head and gave an order to his subordinates. The zombies immediately scrambled to leave, and ran as fast as they could. Mo Yan's mission was still the same as before. Gather the zombies, the more the better. He looked at the huge circle of zombies that had formed outside of China's base, and felt that it was still not enough. Still not enough. Those powerful paranormals still hadn't come out. The strongest paranormals on the wall were only level 6, and there wasn't a single level 7 paranormal. It seemed that the zombie tide that he had created was not enough to pressure them. On the other side of China's command room, everyone was already sitting around the semicircle table in front of the big screen. Those who could sit at the table were naturally the leaders. Lin Qiao's seat was arranged to the side, and she was like a vase. At least in the eyes of these leaders and directors, Lin Qiao was only beautiful. As for strength, she had just entered level 7, how strong could she be? Looking at Wu Qingyue beside her, everyone had a tacit understanding that Wu Qingyue was the one who helped her become the leader. Wu Qingyue was sitting on the right side of Xikong Chen in the middle. He crossed his arms and leaned against the back of the chair as he smiled and said, "Looks like the situation is still optimistic, at least we haven't reached level 7 yet." His eyes would occasionally glance at the seat next to Lin Qiao. Xikong Chen was sitting in front of the screen. On the left was Gao Haoyun. Wu Qingyue originally wanted to sit next to Lin Qiao, but someone beat him to it and sat down. That person was Hu Zhiyong. He thought that no matter how lustful Hu Zhiyong was, he wouldn't dare to make a move on Lin Qiao in such an important meeting. However, he didn't expect that before Lin Qiao sat down, this person had the guts to reach out his perverted hand to grab her hand. He even smiled and asked Lin Qiao to sit down, while rubbing her hand. Lin Qiao stood there without moving, and calmly smiled at Hu Zhiyong, who was rubbing her hand. "Director Hu, don't blame me for not reminding you. My hand is poisonous." The smile on Hu Zhiyong's face froze, and then he said indifferently, "Is that so? Beauty, your hand is so smooth, how could it be poisonous?" His face showed that he didn't care, but he let go of her hand. Lin Qiao sat down with a faint smile and said, "You should be glad that you only used one hand to touch me." Hu Zhiyong seriously looked at Lin Qiao's eyes, and thought that this woman must be lying to him. It couldn't be poisonous; if it was, his hand would still be fine. Chapter 776. Hee hee. Lin Qiao just smiled and glanced at his hand. Hu Zhiyong immediately felt a sharp pain coming from the hand that had just grabbed Lin Qiao's hand. Ah! You! Hu Zhiyong's face suddenly changed. Then, he suddenly covered his hand with a pained expression. He stared at Lin Qiao in disbelief. He obviously couldn't believe that this woman actually dared to poison him. I advise you to quickly chop off this hand. Otherwise, you won't be able to keep your life for long. Lin Qiao sat down with one hand on the table and tilted her neck to support half of her face. She put away the smile on her face and said to him coldly. Everyone was stunned by this turn of events. They looked at Lin Qiao in confusion and disbelief. They could not believe that this woman would dare to attack a rank 7 powerhouse in front of so many chief-level powerhouses in such an occasion. Only Wu Qingyue reacted quickly. He sneered at Hu Zhiyong and cursed in his heart. You! When did you poison me? Hu Zhiyong's body trembled. He stood up from the chair and pulled away from Lin Qiao. He didn't chop off his hand like Lin Qiao said. He only used his special ability to block his hand and tried to force the poison out. He glared at Lin Qiao angrily and asked while gritting his teeth. He quickly realized that his special ability couldn't even stop the poison from spreading, let alone force it out. In just 2 sentences, his hand was in pain from his entire palm to his forearm. Then, it quickly rushed up his arm. At this moment, his face was covered in sweat. The veins on his forehead were bulging and his face was blue. He looked like he was in great pain. At this moment, Gao Haoyun suddenly waved his hand and immediately froze Hu Zhiyong's hand into ice. Gao Haoyun looked at Lin Qiao and his eyes flickered. Lin Qiao shrugged and said indifferently, then let's freeze it first. It won't be frozen for long anyway. She didn't use fire to directly burn his hand. Instead, she used fire mist to permeate it. Because there was too little mist, it could only temporarily flow along the blood vessels. However, this was also extremely painful. Now that it was frozen by the level 8 Gao Haoyun's ability, its attributes were temporarily suppressed. However, if the ice on Hu Zhiyong's hand melted, he would immediately feel the burning pain again. Sikong Chen looked at Hu Zhiyong, then at Lin Qiao. The expression in his eyes darkened. Lin Qiao met his gaze, thinking that he would plead for Hu Zhiyong. In the end, this person just looked at her quietly without any expression on his face. Even his eyes were calm and deep, making it impossible to see through his emotions. Hu Zhiyong heaved a sigh of relief when his hand was frozen by Gao Haoyun. It was truly a clash of ice and fire. It was enough for him to endure. After catching his breath, he fiercely glared at Lin Qiao. With a ferocious and murderous expression, he gnashed his teeth and said, "You are courting death, woman. Don't think you can be so arrogant just because you have a poison arcana. Just you wait." However, Lin Qiao didn't even look at him as he said to Sikong Chen, "Chief Sikong, the people in your base probably won't be able to hold on much longer if this continues. How are you going to break through this zombie tide?" She knew that China's military ammunition had already been used up. Whatever artillery shells, missiles, and bombs were almost all thrown into the zombie tide, but it still couldn't stop the zombie tide's endless attack. Every time a hole was blown up, it would immediately be filled up. Every time a group was killed, another group would immediately rush up from behind. There was no end to it, no end to it. Looking outside, standing on the high walls, they couldn't even see the edge of the zombie tide. Because the zombie tide had already congested more than 10 kilometers away, it was impossible to find a place without zombies outside of China's base. Energy bombs that were too powerful, like missiles or nuclear bombs, could only be used if they abandoned this place. However, there were still 2 million survivors here. It was impossible to bring them all away. Therefore, Sikong-chin wouldn't use such a powerful weapon unless it was the last resort. He had it, but it wasn't time for him to use it yet. At least, he had used up all kinds of small land missiles. Short range, medium range, and other than the long range ones, he had used almost all of them. However, against the increasing number of zombies, it didn't have any effective effect. Outside of China's wall, not only were the zombies piled up, their corpses were also piled up. The low-power bullets were used up, but the high-power bullets still couldn't be used. The other guns and ammunition were also gradually running out, so they could only rely on metahumans. As for the powerful metahumans, they still haven't come out. It's not that they don't want to come out, but if they don't deal with the main cause of the zombie tide, they would only be wasting their metahumans. Sikong-chin looked at Lin Xiao without saying a word, but his eyes had a hint of prying. He opened his mouth and said, "There is no way to find out the situation in the minefield." This meant that they knew that the minefield was the cause of the zombie tide, and they also knew that it was the zombie emperor. However, they couldn't even get close to the zombie emperor, and they couldn't find out the other party's situation, so they didn't know how to deal with it. However, they could at least see the most obvious characteristic of it. Sikong-chin looked at Wu Qingyue. As long as one wasn't blind, they could also see that the zombie emperor was lightning type. It was unknown what the difference was between a rank 8 lightning type zombie emperor and a rank 8 metahuman. Lin Xiao looked at Gao Haoyun and said to Sikong-chin, "From what I know, this zombie emperor came from the Black Dragon base. Doesn't the Ice Demon leader know why he was so reluctant? Before your base was breached, a group of people had already died, right? Could it be that it has nothing to do with this?" Sikong-chin looked at Lin Xiao with a cold glint in his eyes, then he looked at Wu Qingyue. He didn't expect the information from these two to be so detailed, and this woman was becoming more and more complicated. Even after coming here and facing so many of the strongest people in the post-apocalyptic era, her attitude was still calm and relaxed. Moreover, she didn't tolerate the invasion of others and retaliated on the spot. Decisive, efficient, and brutal. Regarding this, none of us have come into contact with the zombie emperor. We have already sent one of our directors to investigate, but we still haven't received any news. Even the rank 7 director has lost contact with us. At this moment, Wei Haiqing suddenly appeared and sighed. It was obvious that he was telling Lin Xiao that they went out to find the reason. They just haven't found it yet. Could it be that the Ice Demon leader from the Black Dragon base doesn't know? At this moment, Wu Qingyue asked doubtfully. "Why do I have to know?" Gao Haoyun sneered. "Because they came after you." Wu Qingyue smiled and swept a glance at him. Gao Haoyun's expression choked. "That's right, but they can't say that he was the one who led them here, right?" Chapter 777. At this time, no one cared about Hu Zhiyong, who was sitting on the other side with a pained expression. In the eyes of those who understood, this guy was reaping what he sowed. But there were also people who felt it was unfair for him. Seeing this woman attack Hu Zhiyong and then change the topic with Sikong-chin and the others, Lu Jinan couldn't help but say with a gloomy face, "Woman, you dare to hurt our Huaxia base's director without reason. You didn't come here to help us fight against the zombie tide, did you?" These words seemed to imply that Lin Xiao came here with ulterior motives. Without reason. If this director who didn't grab someone's hand, how could he be poisoned? You have to know that even I don't dare to touch this Miss Liu. Director who really has guts. Before Lin Xiao could say anything, Wu Qingyue said with a smile. But when he looked at Hu Zhiyong, his eyes were extremely cold, and a trace of killing intent flashed through. It was just holding hands, and you want to cripple someone's arm. This Miss Liu is a bit too tyrannical. Lu Jinan snorted. He looked at Hu Zhiyong and saw that his face was pale, and his eyes were a bit unfocused as he leaned against the chair. Although Gao Haoyun helped him freeze his arm, the pain just now had clearly made him collapse. He still hadn't recovered yet. Do you know that men and women shouldn't touch each other? Do you know what molestation is? Touching someone without the consent of the woman, and having dirty thoughts. I just want him to remember that not just any woman can be touched. Lin Qiao sneered, and said with a calm expression. Humph, he only invited you to sit down with good intentions. You think that someone is molesting you, your skin is thicker than the walls of the base. Lu Jinan sneered, and said mockingly. Lin Qiao looked at him, and his head continued to tilt. A light flashed in his eyes, and he said indifferently, if your mom was walking on the street and a stranger held her hand, you wouldn't care if that person was molesting your mom. I don't care. But now that I said he was molesting me, he is. Unless his hand is frozen like this for the rest of his life, it will still be crippled. What can you do? You. Unreasonable. Lu Jinan glared at her with a pale face. If he just sits there and doesn't take the initiative to touch me, of course it would be fine. Who asked him to harbor evil intentions and want to take advantage of her? Reap what you sow. Well, this problem isn't important for the time being. The important thing is how to deal with the zombie horde outside or the lightning-type corpse emperor, right? Am I right? Leader C. Lin Qiao smiled calmly and changed the topic back to Si Kongqin. This was the fate of those who dared to try to take advantage of her. Did they think that she was easy to bully just because she was young and beautiful? Si Kongqin glanced at Hu Zhiyong and said with an indifferent expression, looking at director Hu's appearance, he won't die for a while. Let's see if there's any way to investigate the corpse emperor. As long as no one causes trouble again. Wu Qingyue smiled as he glanced at Hu Zhiyong, then glanced at Lu Jinan. Gao Haoyun also became silent at this moment, but the way he looked at Lin Qiao was much more restrained. It wasn't as blatant as before. He didn't expect this woman to have a poison ability. Previously, he only knew that the new base next to Haiqing was a female leader, but he didn't know anything else about this female leader. So if he wanted to touch her, he had to first control her ability if she wasn't willing. This was a bit troublesome. But with such a beautiful and alluring appearance, it was worth it no matter how troublesome it was. But it wasn't the time to shed all pretense of cordiality. It was better to get her first. If he could get her to willingly lie down under him, then it wouldn't be so troublesome. Gao Haoyun looked at Lin Qiao's eyes with all kinds of thoughts in his mind. Fortunately, his gaze was much more restrained, and the others couldn't see that he was still thinking about the beautiful leader. But to Lin Qiao, this gaze was still too obvious. Tell me, what do you guys plan to do next? Although we're here, we definitely won't just stand and watch. I just don't know how much firearms the Huaxia base will pay. At this time, Wu Qingyue withdrew his gaze that had assassinated Hu Zhiyong 10,000 times and smiled at Si Kongqin. His words made it clear that they weren't here to help for free. If they wanted to help, not only would they have to pay, but they would also have to see how much was given. The more they gave, the more help they would be able to provide. Smart people were easy to talk to, and everyone understood the meaning behind his words. In terms of firearms, you've also seen that we're lacking the most right now. Or can you change it to something else? How about the energy core? Si Kongqin looked at Wu Qingyue expressionlessly. There's no need to give it now, I can wait. Anyway, you guys can make it yourself here. When the quantity is enough, you can send it to Haiqing. Wu Qingyue smiled and waved his hand. That's not a problem. Since Haiqing wants firearms, you can just write down a list and give it to me. What does Miss Lu want? Si Kongqin agreed to Wu Qingyue's conditions and turned to look at Lin Qiao expressionlessly. Oh, I don't need it. I'm just here to watch the show. If you really need my help, then we'll talk about what I want. Don't worry, your Huaxia base can afford it. Lin Qiao smiled and replied casually. Just when people here were bargaining, people in other bases outside also received the news that Haiqing had joined. In the border town of another city next to Huaxia City, it might be 30 or 40 kilometers away from Huaxia. But they could quickly know the distance after receiving the information. This time, it was not Li Xingye who came out, but another leader. This was a young man who seemed to be in his 30s. He was thin and of medium height, estimated to be about 1.75 meters. His appearance was ordinary, which was the kind of type that couldn't be found in the crowd. But when people saw his eyes, they would inexplicably have a kind of cold feeling. In addition, his temperament was gloomy. Standing beside this person always made people uncomfortable. Su Changmu followed him and asked, "Can Haiqing get any benefits if we join at this time? After all, the firearms and ammunition have almost been consumed in Huaxia base. Is Xikongchen willing to take out the remaining powerful nuclear weapons?" "Not until the last step. The current situation can't be predicted," Guikong said in a low and cold voice. His voice was not like that of ordinary people. It was a little hoarse but not abrasive. Because of the hoarse voice, it was a little magnetic. Originally, it was a very pleasant voice, but it was full of strong cold taste, which made people very uncomfortable. He continued, "Although the situation in Huaxia looks very unfavorable now, Xikongchen has kept a lot of trump cards. It is estimated that he will use these to exchange with other bases." Chapter 778. Because the number of zombies is still increasing, Xikongchen will not take out those powerful weapons that can destroy an entire city for the time being. Thus, he should still have a lot of trump cards. Then did he get reinforcements just to fight against the zombies? Isn't that a loss? Su Changmu asked in confusion. Guikong said with a deep gaze, "He did not get experts just to deal with ordinary zombies, they are going to deal with the zombie emperor. 3 rank 8 metahumans can basically kill a zombie emperor without letting it escape. Against a rank 8 zombie emperor, rank 7 metahumans are no longer useful." On the other side, the people from Qingshan base who were hiding not far away from Huaxia base also reacted when they received the news of Wu Qingyue's group entering. "Wow, they went in. Should we go in as well? Otherwise, Wu Qingyue will have the upper hand. If we go in, won't we be left behind in Ocean City?" A girl with long wavy hair, big eyes, and a baby face stood beside Lan Lu and said with an anxious expression, "Little Yi, calm down. The other party has just arrived, they will not make a move so quickly. Xikongchen still wants to negotiate with them." Zheng Hao, who was standing beside Lei Qing, looked at Yi Yingwe with an amused expression. At this time, a piece of paper was handed over. On it was written, "Universal Base's female leader is also here." Everyone was stunned when they saw this. They looked up at the few people beside them who were wearing masks over their heads. They still have not figured out the strength of the zombie emperor, they will not make a move so quickly. Lan Lu's eyes flashed, he smiled and continued, "But if the female leader of Universal Base is helping them, they should be able to make some progress soon. Then, are we still going to continue watching?" Yi Yingyue looked at him with her big round eyes and asked. With a round baby face and a pair of big eyes, even though she was already in her 20s, Yi Yingyue still looked like an 18-year-old girl. Lan Lu shook his head and said with a smile on his face, "No, we are also preparing to go over. Let's see how they are going to deal with the zombie emperor. Actually, you want to meet the female leader, right? You are waiting for her." The handsome but expressionless Lei Qing said. Lan Lu looked at him with a smile and did not say anything. The last base of the Meng clan, which was very weak, did not intend to join. He decided to watch the progress from afar. In the command center of the Huaxia base, everyone was looking at the situation on the screen while looking for any minefields. The duration of each disappearance is different. Sometimes it's a few hours, and sometimes it's a day or two. Wei Haichao, one of the directors of Huaxia base, introduced the minefield to Wu Qingyue and Lin Qiao. We've sent out several batches of people, and the strongest of them has even reached level 7. But until now, no one has come back to reveal the situation. Si Kongqin looked at the zombies that were constantly rushing up the wall, and his eyes were very depressed. He wasn't even a level 7 beast king by his side, so how could he possibly come back? Lin Qiao and Wu Qingyue thought to themselves. Therefore, the first thing we need to do now is to find out more about this zombie emperor. But who's going? Qiao Lin interrupted. Without sufficient information, the chances of success for any battle plan would be greatly reduced. The way I see it, we don't need to gather information, we just need to kill the 3 of us and we will know. Do you think he can escape from the 3 of us? Gao Haoyin expressed that it would be better to just kill the zombie emperor. If it was just a zombie emperor, even if there were level 6 or level 7 beast kings by his side, those beast kings would not be a match for level 8 metahumans. I agree with Leader Gao's method. Lu Jinan looked at Qiao Lin coldly and said. Qiao Lin shrugged and did not say anything. If it was just a normal zombie emperor, it might not be able to escape from 3 level 8 metahumans. But Mo Yan's current situation was not right, he was going berserk more and more frequently, causing his berserk aura to become stronger. If he suddenly went berserk while being attacked, it would not be easy to kill him. At this time, Mo Yan had sensed the 2 familiar auras and learned from his subordinates that a few aircrafts had flown into Huaxia base. He looked coldly at the direction of Huaxia base, killing intent flashed in his eyes. Asking for reinforcements? Roar dash! At this time, the female zombie beside him roared at him worriedly. Mo Yan looked back at her and shook his head. Then he turned to look at Huaxia base. He would not leave until he killed all of them. Even if he went berserk and completely lost his mind, he would not give up. The female zombie was only level 5, she could not suppress his situation. At most, she would only be able to prolong the time. There was not much time left, he could not wait any longer. Maybe there would be other beast kings coming to help the people in Huaxia base. After thinking for a while, he suddenly turned his head and roared at the female zombie, then his figure flashed and disappeared. At this time, the sky above the north gate of Huaxia base began to gather black clouds. Dense lightning began to flash in the black clouds. Rumble dash, a low rumble of thunder could be heard. In the command room, Si Kongqin suddenly stood up. Not good, the thunderclouds appeared at the gate of the base. Wei Haichao shouted anxiously. Previously, these thunderclouds had been moving everywhere, but they had never come close to the base. This time, they directly rushed to the gate. Boom dash, before anyone could react, they saw a huge thick lightning strike down from the screen. With a boom, it exploded on the top wall of the gate. Then, the screen on the screen suddenly crackled and disappeared. What happened? This time, there was only one lightning strike. Although there were a lot of lightning strikes before, the power was very small. Now, with the power of this lightning, I'm afraid that the base's wall will be destroyed in 2 more strikes. At this time, Hong Yijie frowned and said with some surprise. The screen was destroyed by the magnetic field of the lightning, and immediately, the small screens next to it showed the scene of that location. Then, they saw that the gate that was already emitting thick smoke was once again struck down by a lightning as thick as a human body. In this situation, there was no point for everyone to stay in the command room. Si Kongqin immediately turned around and strode out of the command room. The others immediately got up and followed him out. Although Hu Xiong's hand was frozen, it did not affect his walking. He fiercely stared at Lin Xiao, looking like he wanted to eat her. This woman dared to make him lose face in front of so many leaders. He must find a way to catch her, then ruthlessly humiliate her, and then kill her. Chapter 779. Everyone could feel Hu Zhiyong's resentful gaze, let alone Lin Xiao. But before she could turn around, a figure blocked her from behind. Don't blame me for not reminding you, Director Hu. In your current state, you should stay here and rest. Don't go to the front line, it's too dangerous. What if someone accidentally breaks your arm? Wu Qingyue walked behind Lin Xiao, turned around, and said to Hu Zhiyong with a smile on his face. Hu Zhiyong stared at him with a dark expression and didn't say anything. His lips had already turned blue from the cold, and his pale face was covered in sweat. Very quickly, everyone exited the command tower. Following which, their silhouettes flashed, and in the blink of an eye, all the leaders had disappeared. Hu Zhiyong, who walked out a step later, stared at the place where Lin Xiao disappeared, and a cold murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Then, he moved forward and also disappeared. A few figures appeared on the city wall a few hundred meters away from the gate that was bombarded by the lightning. Another bolt of lightning fell from the sky. However, this lightning bolt's momentum was about to fall. Just as it was about to collapse, it suddenly made a turn and flew to the side. Wu Qingyue waved his hand to catch the lightning bolt, and looked around with a calm expression. I'm here, I can block these lightning bolts. You guys do as you see fit. Wu Qingyue looked around and didn't find the zombie emperor's aura, so he turned his head slightly and said to the people next to him. Xikong Chen took a step forward and looked at the iron wall on the other side of the gate. There were several holes in the wall. Because of the power of the lightning bolt, the holes on the iron wall were cracked. There was a lot of movement here, but other than the ordinary zombies that were still swarming up, there were no zombies above level 4. Although they knew that there was a zombie emperor outside, they had no idea where it was. Even if they wanted to deal with it, they had to have a target, but they didn't even know where the target was. Lin Xiao knew where it was, but would she tell them? Of course not. She was really here to watch the show, and also. Lin Xiao glanced at the Huaxia base behind her without anyone noticing. When she came out, she had already released Lin Kuei's 2 level first kings, Yi Qingxian and Imo, from the space as fast as she could, and asked them to find Lin Kuei's sister. After Lin Kuei came out, he hid in the dark with the 2 level 1 kings. He followed the information from his previous memories and quickly sneaked in a certain direction. Not long after, he arrived at the place. It was a residential area for ordinary people. Usually, it would be crowded and messy. But now, it was very quiet. There were few people around, and the doors and windows of the houses on the buildings were all tightly shut. The 3 zombies sniffed the smell of humans. The smell was messy, but it wasn't fresh. It was like a lingering smell that was slowly disappearing. Judging from the smell, the number of living humans had decreased a lot. This was because most of the young men had been taken to the city wall to fight against the zombie tide. Most of the people left here were the old, the weak, the sick, and women. After Lin Kuei arrived nearby, he hid on a tree and carefully sniffed the surrounding scents. Then, his expression sank slightly, and his expression became somewhat solemn. In a flash, he jumped onto the roof next to the tree and continued to jump in another direction. His speed was very fast, and there were 2 rank 1 zombie kings following behind him. Not long after, he arrived at a residential area. There were many 5-story to 7-story buildings, both big and small. Lin Kuei found one of the buildings with familiarity, and climbed down from the balcony window from the top of the building. When he reached the balcony of a room on the 5th floor, he stopped outside. There were metal anti-theft bars installed on the windows of the balcony of the building. Lin Kuei turned his head and looked around. It was quiet. Even if he was such a big zombie hanging outside the balcony of a building, no one seemed to notice him. He gave a look to the level 1 king next to him. Mo waved his hand, and the metal bar in front of Lin Kuei immediately changed shape and opened a hole. After entering the house, Lin Kuei's expression became even more gloomy. There was no one in the house. This was a single-room rental house with 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and 1 kitchen. The kitchen and the balcony were together. Lin Kuei had been here many times before, and it was full of familiar smells. But now, these smells were slowly dissipating. This was the smell left behind, and it had become very difficult to talk about. If they were not zombies, and their noses were hundreds of times more sensitive than dogs, they would not be able to smell these smells. This meant that the owner of this house had not lived here for a long time, at least for more than half a year. The person who was supposed to live here had not been here for half a year. So where did he go? Looking at the furnishings in the house, everything was covered with a thin layer of dust. A lot of daily necessities were gone, and so were clothes. It seemed that the original owner had moved away. Lin Kuei did not know where his sister who lived here had moved to, and why she left. But in the entire China base, there was no smell of his sister other than this place. That was only within a general range. Lin Kuei thought for a while, and immediately got out of the house and climbed to the top of the building. Once again, he carefully sniffed in all directions. Nothing. Still nothing. There was nothing in this area, so Lin Kuei immediately left with the 2 level 1 king zombies and went to the next area. At this time, at the location of the door that was bombed by the lightning, Wu Qingyue connected with a few lightning strikes, and Mo Yen stopped for a while. When Sikongchen arrived, he casually threw out a few fire dragons towards the zombies under the wall. The temperature of the fire dragons was very high, and it carried a heat that could burn a person as it rushed towards the zombies. The zombies that were pounced on by the fire dragons were all burned into ashes as soon as they fell. The fire dragons moved back and forth under the wall, and very quickly, the zombies that had piled up like a mountain were burned into ashes, and the ashes were blown away by the wind. Sikong Chen's face was calm and collected, and his control over the fire dragons was also very casual. His eyes were carefully observing the surroundings, and he wanted to see where the zombie emperor was hiding and controlling the lightning ability to bomb the door. But it was not only him, everyone was also observing the surroundings. They did not find any traces of the zombie emperor. Only Lin Qiao had a calm expression as he glanced at a certain place, and then at another place. At this moment, the black clouds in the sky began to flicker with electric snakes. Boom, rumble dash, the dull sound of thunder came from above. You also can't feel the location of the energy. Sikong Chen suddenly turned his head to look at Wu Qingyue and asked. Wu Qingyue shook his head, I can't feel it. He was not lying, he really couldn't feel the connection point of the opponent's lightning. Chapter 780. However, this time, the lightning was clearly not falling randomly. It was striking down with a purpose. It was obvious that the aim was being controlled. Moreover, after Wu Qingyue received a few lightning bolts, he immediately stopped his useless attacks. However, the rolling thunder and lightning were brewing in the dark clouds in the sky. Even though they were quite a distance apart, Lin Qiao could still sense that Mo Yen had retracted his aura. It seemed that he was awake. He didn't seem to be in a frenzied state. She lowered her eyes slightly and stood on the side like a vase. In this densely packed group of zombies in front of him, there were no zombies from level 3 to level 5. It wasn't that Mo Yen didn't want to summon them, but that he had already killed them all. She could sense that Mo Yan's subordinates were on the verge of breaking through. He just didn't know how strong Mo Yan's chi had become. Could it be that his loss of control had something to do with absorbing too much corpse core energy? Just as Lin Qiao was guessing Mo Yan's situation, the lightning snakes in the sky suddenly struck down from the dark clouds. Hundreds of lightning bolts covered an area of several hundred meters, directly covering the location of the leaders and board members. When everyone saw this, they immediately dodged. Wu Qingyue could handle 1, 2, or 3 of them, but he couldn't handle hundreds of electric snakes of different sizes in a short time. Hu Zhiyong's reaction was slower than the rest because his body was not in a good state, but he still quickly jumped out. However, just as he leaped into the air, a bolt of lightning suddenly struck him out of nowhere. Hu Zhiyong, who was in mid-air and had nowhere to dodge, was immediately struck by the strange lightning. Ah! Hu Zhiyong let out a blood-curdling scream before falling to the ground. Xikong Chen, Gao Haoyun, and the others had just landed when they heard a shout. They immediately turned their heads to look. In the end, he saw Hu Zhiyong lying on the ground outside the city wall. His entire body was charred black, trembling, and smoking. Wu Qingyue, who had landed on the other side, had a dark glint in his eyes. Lin Qiao landed back on the city wall and looked at Hu Zhiyong with the corner of his mouth twitching. He silently looked at Wu Qingyue. Then, with a slight shake of her finger, a tiny wisp of black flame leaped out from her finger. Hu Zhiyong, who had been blasted to the ground, felt his energy leaking out in a disorderly manner. He lay on the ground in a daze and had not yet recovered. Fortunately, Xikong Chen had just used his flame dragon to clear the area outside of the wall. There were no more zombies on the ground, nor were there any corpses. It was just a pile of ash. Hu Zhiyong's frozen hand was now broken. His arm had completely disappeared, but perhaps because it was frozen, the blood did not flow out of the wound. Even the pinkish-white flesh was frozen white. Without waiting for him to wake up, a small black flame attached itself to his body. Then, with a boom, Hu Zhiyong's body suddenly ignited with a black flame. Before he could scream, the black flames had already melted his throat and neck. In the blink of an eye, the rest of the head also began to disappear. In the blink of an eye, the rank 7 metahuman Hu Zhiyong had disappeared, leaving only a shining energy core on the ground. Hu Zhiyong. Lu Jinan had just landed in a safe position and did not notice that Hu Zhiyong had been struck by lightning. When he followed Hu Zhiyong's aura and looked at the ground outside of the city, he saw Hu Zhiyong's body suddenly burst into black flames and burned him to ashes. Lu Jinan's eyes widened in disbelief. The others were also stunned and could not react. But soon, Xikong Chen was the first to react. He glanced at Wu Qingyue and saw that the other party also had a surprised expression. Oh, Director Hu died just like that. Gao Haoyun landed beside Xikong Chen with a surprised expression and stared at the shining energy core on the ground. A figure flashed on the wall, a figure swept down and flashed past the location of the energy core. The energy core then disappeared. Ho Guizhong flashed to Xikong Chen's side and handed the energy core in his hand to him. He was a rank 7 wind metahuman, his speed was naturally much faster than others. Xikong Chen held the energy core with a gloomy expression. He raised his head and looked at Ho Guizhong. Ho Guizhong nodded. Xikong Chen glanced at Wu Qingyue vaguely. The others did not know why Hu Zhiyong was hit by one of the lightning strikes. They all thought that Hu Zhiyong was in a bad state and did not react fast enough to dodge the lightning. Only Xikong Chen vaguely sensed a slight energy fluctuation from Wu Qingyue. However, he could not sense where the black flames came from. Xikong Chen's face was gloomy, but he did not make any other reaction. Hu Zhiyong and Lu Jinan had always been against him, thinking that they did not put him, the leader, in their eyes just because their abilities had reached rank 7. If it was not for the fact that the two of them had some combat power at rank 7 and were useful to the base, he would not have tolerated their arrogance. But now, when it was time to use their combat power, they died so quickly. Although the two of them were in charge of research, their research skills were not the best. Boom! 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 The dense lightning struck down once again. I can feel it. He's in the southwest direction. At this time, Wu Qingyue suddenly shouted and pointed in the southwest direction. Xikong Chen and Gao Haoyun immediately dashed out. If one were to ask who wanted to kill the zombie emperor the most, the first would be Xikong Chen, and the second would definitely be Gao Haoyun. Although he did not care about the survivors of the Black Dragon base, he still cared about the resources of the Black Dragon base. In the end, they were all destroyed by the zombie emperor. How could he not hate the zombie emperor? He really wanted to kill the zombie emperor, but he knew that he would not be able to kill it by himself. He could not even compete with the opponent's lightning ability in terms of power, so he might be able to compete with it in terms of energy. However, he could not compete with the zombie emperor's physique and stamina. Although he cared about the resources of the base, Gao Haoyun was more concerned about his own life. So when he saw that the situation was not good, he immediately abandoned the base and left. Now that he had joined China, he was now a rank 8 metahuman, and was on the same level as Xikong Chen in China. So when he came here, he really wanted Xikong Chen to help him kill the zombie emperor. However, they could not find any traces of the zombie emperor, not to mention killing it. So when Wu Qingyue mentioned the location of the zombie emperor, Gao Haoyun and Xikong Chen moved together. While everyone was fighting the zombie emperor outside, the zombies in Lin Qiao's space had nothing to do and began to play cards. That's right, playing cards. Although they did not have memories, their intelligence was still online. Lu Tianyi only explained the rules once, and they quickly started playing. The bored Lu Tianyi grabbed Pesticide and played Landlord with Jing Yan, while Xiao Xiao and the other zombies watched from the side. Chapter 781. A bunch of zombies sat on the flat steps in front of the building, playing in a circle. 3 QS and a pair. Lu Tianyi used his husky zombie-like voice to play the cards down. The next Pesticide didn't even think and played his 3 KS and a pair as well. Lu Tianyi rolled his eyes and really wanted to throw the cards in his hand at him. Shouldn't you let him pass at this time? Can't you just leave your 3 KS to play Landlord? You and I are both farmers, why are you playing me? Lu Tianyi stared at Pesticide. Jing Yan didn't say anything, she just pulled out the 3 aces and a pair of KS and played them. She was the landlord, although she had a lot of cards in her hand, they were very big. Lu Tianyi directly held his forehead, pass pass pass, 3 aces, unless 3 2s came up, or if there was a bomb. However, he only had a 2s in his hand, and no bomb. How to play? Pesticide looked at the cards in his hand and shook his head. Then, he regretted throwing out the 3 KS. Jing Yan expressionlessly pulled out the 3 7s and a pair and played them. Pesticide stared at the 3 7s and a pair, he really wanted to pick up the 3 KS that he had just played. Jing Yan glanced at him indifferently. Pesticide silently retracted his claws. Fine, he couldn't beat his own kind. Xiao Xiao the cat watched from behind Jing Yan. Although she didn't understand at first, she understood as she watched. Hu Li, who was originally a bit chubby, was sitting on the steps to the side. After curling up into a ball, she looked even more chubby. She placed her hands on her knees and held her chin as she looked at the lake in the distance. She muttered softly, "When will leader let us out to play? It's so boring in here." It was clearly very lively outside, but in the end, they could only play landlord in boss's space. Although she didn't transform, it seemed like there was a big tail swaying behind her. Phew, just as she was saying that it was boring, a shadow suddenly ran in front of her. Hu Li's expression froze, and before she could react, she saw a naked zombie dog run in front of her. Oh, seeing these two, there must be another one around. Huli raised his head and looked left and right. As a result, he saw a black snake head the size of a bucket above his head. From time to time, it would spit out its slender tongue. He stared at the mushroom spirit and zombie dog that were running around the buildings like idiots. From time to time, the three of them would run out of the forest. The mushroom spirit really loved to run. Like a child with ADHD, it would swing a few of its tentacles and run around randomly. Then he followed the zombie dog to flirt with it. The zombie dog was also brainless. Every time it saw the mushroom spirit, it would immediately chase it. He used to like flirting with Dahe, but now he was flirted with by the mushroom spirit. At first, when the mushroom spirit ran out and trampled on Lu Tiany's melon and vegetable fields and other agricultural products, Lu Tiany chased it for a long time with his sickle. Of course, he couldn't catch up with the mutants. The mushroom spirit would get happier the more people chased after it. In addition to Lu Tiany and the others who were playing the landlord out of boredom, there were others who either absorbed the remaining zombie nuclei on their bodies to cultivate or gathered together to fight. The number of level 3 and level 4 zombies behind them was not small. Now that they were all crowded together, there would definitely be friction. But because Lin Qiao warned them not to use their full strength, they could still fight with their hands and feet. So at the end of the day, they had to fight several times. While the zombies were bustling, the lawn across the lake was also very lively. Goats and roe deers fought every day, and their lives would not stop. In order to let these animals drink water, some time ago, Lin Qiao dug a hole in the grass a few meters away from the lake, and then dug a small ditch to bring some water from the lake for the deer and goats to drink. After such a long time, those roe deers had already given birth to little roe deers. A group of zombies was leisurely inside, and Lin Qiao, who was outside, was also bored watching the chaotic situation being controlled by the Huaxia directors. When Xikong Chen and Gao Haoyun chased in the direction pointed by Wu Qingyue for a few kilometers outside the base, they felt a powerful aura retreating slowly. Both of their spirits were lifted, and their eyes lit up. Wu Qingyue's senses were right, it was indeed in this direction. So the two of them chased after the aura even more closely. Suddenly, at this moment, a few figures flew over from the other side of the building, and rushed towards the entrance of the Huaxia base. Lin Qiao could sense who it was from afar. It was the people from Qingshan base. The people from Qingshan base did not directly rush into the base, but stopped on the edge of the building outside the vacuum zone. On the Huaxia side, Hou Guizhong, the deputy leader of the wind ability user, immediately went out to find out the identity of the other party. Not long after, he was seen leading people into the Huaxia base. Our leader and Gao Haoyun from the Black Dragon base are chasing after the zombie emperor. I wonder if Leader Lan wants to go over and help. Hou Guizhong smiled at Lan Lu and asked tentatively. Lan Lu had brought 3 people with him, a doll girl and 2 men. Their abilities were at least level 6. No need, they will be back soon. Lan Lu smiled at Hou Guizhong and shook his head. Hou Guizhong looked at him in confusion, not believing Lan Lu's words. Although there were 2 level 8 espers working together to chase after the zombie emperor, even if they could kill it, it would not be that fast. Hou Guizhong looked at Wu Qingyue who was standing leisurely at the side and asked, "Do we only need our leader and Gao Haoyun to deal with the zombie emperor?" He was asking Wu Qingyue why he did not go. Moreover, after Gao Haoyun came to Huaxia, no one called him Leader Gao anymore. This was because he did not want the Black Dragon base anymore, so naturally, he did not want this leader anymore. It's too late, the zombie emperor has escaped. Wu Qingyue smiled at Hou Guizhong and said. Then he looked at Lan Lu and said, "Your Qingshan base has been nearby for a long time, right? You only came out when you saw us." How cunning. From the looks of it, the situation is not that urgent. Perhaps Leader C still has some tricks up his sleeves, we are afraid of disturbing their battle. Lan Lu smiled at Wu Qingyue and said. Both of them looked at each other with smiles on their faces. The others felt that there was an inexplicable atmosphere between the two of them. Lin Qiao, who was at the side, also looked at the strange hostility in the eyes of the two of them. Didn't he feel that the two of them were on the same side when they had the antidote previously? That's right, speaking of the antidote. Didn't Huaxia just release the antidote to deal with the zombies not long ago? Why was it blocked by the zombie tide now? At this time, Lan Lu smiled and said, doesn't Huaxia have the antidote to the zombie virus? Why haven't I seen it used? Chapter 782. China had been besieged by the zombie horde for almost a month, yet they still hadn't used the antidote. That's why I said this is one of Leader C's trump cards. Lan Lu smiled. That's true, we're just here to join in the fun. Wu Qingyue smiled and said, maybe he's preparing to use it after killing the zombie emperor. If the antidote didn't stop the zombie horde, it would just be a waste. After all, there was an endless horde of zombies. Even if they killed the ones at the front, the ones at the back would still swarm in. See, that's why I said that Leader C doesn't seem to be too worried about the current situation. Lan Lu smiled and looked at the empty space at the bottom of the wall. Xikong Chen had used Huolong to clean up the place, so now that he had left, Huolong would naturally leave as well. When the other directors saw him leave, they naturally made their moves. Those who didn't want to make a move had to put on a show. Otherwise, the other bases would laugh at them. Then why are you in such a hurry to leave? Isn't it more appropriate for you to wait until he's done with his tricks? Wu Qingyue sneered and looked at Lan Lu. Lan Lu looked at him and suddenly turned to look at Lin Qiao and smiled meaningfully. I'm not here just to help Xikong Chen. Wu Qingyue's eyes flashed and smiled. What, you're interested in her? Are you trying to steal her from me? Ah, that's right. Lan Lu turned back and smiled at Wu Qingyue. I'm indeed a little interested in her. He was indeed interested in the female leader and wanted to capture her and dissect her to see how she was different from the other zombies. However, when Wu Qingyue saw the way he stared at Lin Qiao, he wondered if he should give this guy 2 bolts of lightning to kill him. He dared to steal from his wall right in front of him. No, this wall wasn't even his. He didn't know when he started treating Lin Qiao as his own person, but he didn't expect that when she appeared for the first time, she would attract so much attention. Although he knew that this female zombie was indeed very beautiful, he thought that she would at most amaze the men who were used to standing in high positions. Wu Qingyue didn't know that because he was always by Lingling's side, he didn't pay much attention to women. However, the people from the other bases were not as pure as him. The higher the status of a man, the younger and more beautiful the women who wanted to get close to him. In the past few years, he had had enough of these ordinary women who came to his door to flatter him. When he saw a beautiful woman with a high status, he felt that it would be difficult to get his hands on her. It immediately aroused the desire of these men to hunt for women. Therefore, the harder it was to get, the better it would taste in the end. That kind of desire to conquer would make people very excited. Lan Lu's interest in Lin Qiao made Wu Qingyue mistakenly think that this man with a fake smile was also interested in Lin Qiao's beauty. Of course, Lin Qiao also felt Lan Lu's conspicuous gaze, so he came over in a flash. Is this the leader of your base? Lin Qiao asked as he looked at Lei Cheng and the other man. Lei Cheng, who had been expressionless all this while, did not expect Lin Qiao to ask him directly instead of greeting his boss. He shook his head. No, our leader doesn't go out. This is actually a director of our board of directors. Seeing her approach, Lan Lu's gaze directly stuck to Lin Qiao's body, as if he was studying her. He had heard Lei Qing and the others describe this female leader before, and at a glance, she really looked like a human. If it wasn't for the fact that their Qingshan base also had zombies, the feeling between the same kind would not be wrong. He really did not believe that this young and beautiful female leader was a zombie. Lin Qiao did not come over to deal with Lan Lu, but directly said to the people of Huaxia base, "It seems that you still have a lot of tricks up your sleeves, so for the time being, you don't need our help. Then I will leave this place to you. If there is anything you need from me, tell her." After saying that, she left Shen Yuzhen behind, jumped down from the wall, and then walked inside. If she wanted to leave, no one would stop her. Everyone also knew that in other people's bases, there were some places they could go and some places they could not go. As a leader, of course, it was impossible to violate other people's bottom line. However, even if no one stopped Lin Qiao, there were still a lot of people staring at her. Lu Jinan always felt that Hu Zhiyong's sudden death was very strange. The first lightning strike could be said to be an accident. Then when he fell to the ground, what was with the black flame that suddenly appeared on his body? The power of the flame reminded everyone of a woman. It was the nether fire of Hades' base. But nether fire died last year, so it was definitely not her now. However, Lu Jinan suspected that there might be a second person who awakened the flame ability similar to the nether fire. He did not suspect that it was Lin Qiao who did it, because Lin Qiao had just shown that her ability was poison, not this kind of flame. But this did not mean that it had nothing to do with Lin Qiao. Maybe she secretly sent someone to do it. So when he saw that Lin Qiao left the top of the wall, he immediately sent someone to follow her. Lin Qiao just turned a corner, and she got rid of the people behind her. Lu Jinan's people followed behind her, and as soon as they saw her turning a corner, she walked into an alley. In the end, when they ran over, she was gone. Lin Qiao quickly went in the direction of Lin Kuei. Because she saw him running around the entire base, she knew that he might not have found the target. Soon, she appeared near Lin Kuei and the other zombies. As soon as she appeared, Lin Kuei and the other two stopped and immediately approached her. "You didn't find him?" Lin Qiao looked at Lin Kuei and asked. Lin Kuei's tail and ears were already exposed, and his long tail was swinging vigorously behind him, looking a little impatient. "No, the original place has not been lived in for half a year." Lin Kuei shook his head and said with some depression. He was afraid that something had happened to his sister, Lin Jing, when he was captured, but the owner of the house had packed up and left. He comforted himself that his sister might have left on her own to go somewhere else. But he was very worried because his sister was an ordinary person. She was not a psychic, and in this base, she completely relied on being a servant for others to survive. Because Lin Kuei had been secretly protecting Lin Jing, the people who had designs on her in the first 2 years had inexplicably disappeared. Later, as time passed, the people around her did not dare to touch her. He had a feeling that she might be protected by someone powerful in the dark. She was mysterious, and in order to not disappear for no reason, those people finally gave up all kinds of bad ideas. Chapter 783. Did she leave by herself? Lin Qiao asked him. Yes, but I don't know the reason, Lin Kuei shook his head and said with disappointment. Lin Qiao thought for a while, then looked at him and said, "Is there anyone living around where she lives now?" Lin Kuei nodded and said, "Yes." "Go and ask," Lin Qiao said. Soon, Lin Kuei took Lin Qiao back to Lin Jing's place. After opening the locked door, they went upstairs from the corridor downstairs. On the 5th floor, there were more than a dozen single rooms, and only 2 of them had the smell of living people. Lin Qiao took Duanwan and Lin Kuei to one of the rooms. He raised his hand and knocked on the door rhythmically, greeting, "Is there anyone inside?" He knew that there was someone inside, but he still asked if there was anyone inside. Moreover, the knocking was neither light nor heavy, and there was a rhythm to it. It was also to tell the people inside that they didn't mean any harm. After waiting for a while, they didn't hear any movement inside. Lin Qiao was not in a hurry. He knocked on the door again and said, "I know there is someone inside. Please open the door. I want to ask you for a favor." There was more than one person inside, and there was more than one person. Seeing that the people inside still refused to come out, Lin Qiao could only change his tone. "If you don't open the door, we will force our way in." Although Lin Qiao threatened him verbally, he didn't actually break the door open. Instead, he waited quietly for a while. After more than 10 seconds, he heard the sound of someone walking inside. Soon, the footsteps came behind the door, followed by the sound of a lock being unlocked. The door was opened a crack, and a woman in her 30s appeared behind the crack. The woman stared at Lin Qiao and Duan Wan vigilantly and asked in a low voice, "What? What do you want? Don't worry, we won't go in. We just want to ask a few questions." Lin Qiao smiled pleasantly and asked, "Do you know a person called Ling Jing who used to live in that house? Do you know what happened in her house?" The woman in the crack looked at Lin Qiao inquisitively and then looked at the direction Lin Qiao was pointing. After thinking for a while, she asked Lin Qiao, "Who are you? Why are you asking about her?" Lin Qiao looked at her. She already knew the answer she wanted without asking. She smiled and said, "Oh, she has a younger brother who was separated from her a few years ago. Now he asked me to find her." She felt that this woman didn't have any malicious intentions towards Ling Jing, because Ling Jing was quite a good person and got along well with her neighbors. Therefore, when this woman mentioned Ling Jing's name just now, her mind immediately became vigilant. She had a vague thought that if Lin Qiao was a bad guy, she would cover for Lin Jing. Impossible. She said that her brother died during the apocalypse. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief. Lin Qiao smiled and made up a story. "No, he's not dead. Ling Jing didn't see him die with his own eyes. He was just in a bad state after awakening his ability. In fact, he had been secretly protecting Ling Jing for the past few years. You also know about this, right? There's always a mysterious person protecting Ling Jing. If it's her brother, why didn't he show up? Why is he hiding?" The woman clearly didn't believe Lin Qiao's words, but she thought it was very likely. "Because he's disfigured." Lin Qiao continued, "He's too ugly to see people now, so he doesn't dare to see his sister." Lin Kuei, who was hiding in a corner and was described as disfigured, the woman's eyes flickered and looked at Lin Qiao hesitantly. "Is it really her brother? What do you think his name is?" Lin Qiao said, "Lin Kuei." The woman's eyes lit up. "That's right. But didn't you say that he has been secretly protecting Ling Jing? Why don't you know where he is now?" Lin Qiao could only continue to make up stories. "Because he was seriously injured and has been recuperating until now. He only thought of looking for her when he knew that China's base was besieged by the zombie tide. He didn't expect that the house had been empty for a long time. She left. She had been working as a maid in someone's house. But half a year ago, the man of the house got drunk and probably made a move on Ling Jing. Then, Ling Jing was ready to quit. Who would have thought that the woman of the house didn't like Ling Jing? After the incident, she insisted that Ling Jing was the one who seduced her man. She brought people to take revenge on her several times. Fortunately, she was smart enough to hide in the house. She didn't give that woman a chance to harm her." Seeing Lin Qiao patiently explaining, the woman finally sighed and told him about Ling Jing. In fact, Lin Qiao already knew about these things in her mind. After Ling Jing was stopped by that woman a few times, she knew that she couldn't survive in this base anymore. Because the man of that family was a metahuman and a low-ranking official. But he was afraid of his wife because the lawsuit of his father-in-law was bigger than his. So in order not to offend his wife's family, the man allowed his wife to bully others. Therefore, Ling Jing's life was oppressed and it became harder and harder to survive. In the end, she had no choice. In order to survive and leave this place, she took out all her belongings and hired a few metahumans to escort her to the Meng tribe, which was the closest to China's base. What happened to her later? Was she harmed by that woman? Lin Chao asked her, then slightly tilted her head and glanced at Lin Kuei's direction. No, she found a chance to run away. At that time, that woman sent people to guard downstairs. She begged us to help her find a few metahumans and then left with her. I heard that they went to the Meng tribe's base. Although the conditions there are a little worse, it is close to China's base. The woman finally said. Because Ling Jing could only afford to go to the Meng tribe, she couldn't afford to pay if it was too far away. Even if the conditions at the Meng tribe were bad, at least she didn't have any enemies there. It might be dangerous for her to be unfamiliar with the place. But it was still better than staying in China's base and being killed by that woman at any time. Went to the Meng tribe. Okay, we know. Thank you, this is a thank you gift for you. Please keep it carefully. After Lin Chao got the information she wanted, she took out a few level 3 and 2 level 4 zombie cores and handed them to her. The lowest level she had were level 3 zombie cores. She had level 4 and level 5 ones, but she didn't dare to give too many. She was afraid that it would bring trouble to this ordinary woman. Lin Chao could sense that there were 4 people in the room including the woman in front of her, but they were all ordinary people without metahumans. When the woman saw that Lin Chao wanted to give her something, she awkwardly said, "No, no, no. It's just a few words. You can't give such a precious thing." Lin Chao said, "Don't talk, just take it. Quickly, before others see it. That's it, we're leaving." As she said that, she directly put the zombie cores in her hand into the woman's hand, then took a step back, turned around, and left with Duan Wan. Chapter 784. Lin Chao looked at Lin Kuei and said, "You heard it, your sister should be at the Meng tribe. Can you go by yourself?" Lin Kuei nodded. He heard what the woman said, but he was a bit hesitant. "Are you sure what she said is true?" Lin Chao nodded, "Yes, I can feel her psychological reaction." Lin Kuei heaved a sigh of relief and said, "All right, I'll look for it myself. Bring them with you, if anything happens, tell them to come back and find me." Lin Chao looked at Imo and Yi Qingxian. Lin Kuei looked at the 2 level 1 kings and nodded. Then he quietly left Huaxia base with the 2 level 1 kings. Lin Chao returned to the wall and continued to watch how Sikong Qin was going to deal with the zombie emperor. That zombie emperor is very cunning, it immediately retreated when we chased after it. And there are a few level 2 kings around it. Sikong Qin stood on top of the wall. Although his face was expressionless, his eyes became gloomy. "A few? That many?" Lon Lu frowned. It was very difficult to reach level 7 zombies, the highest level in his base was still level 6. Why did he suddenly feel that level 7 zombies were like cabbages? Everywhere. There were a few in the Universal base, and then there was one in Huaxia base. Now there were a few more. At least 4 to 5, and some level 1 kings. Sikong Qin frowned. The 40-year-old man looked 7 or 8 years younger than his actual age because of the energy recovery of his ability. Because he always had a serious expression, a strong look, and a steady temperament. He gave people the charm of a mature man. Gao Haoyun stood beside him, even though they were both level 8 metahumans. Even though the two of them were about the same age, their temperament was still a lot lower than Sikong Chen's. Only Wu Qingyue looked much younger than the two of them. But Wu Qingyue's temperament was gentle and steady, and he always had a smile on his face. His temperament did not lose to Sikong Chen at all. Although his temperament was not as strong as a mature man like Sikong Chen, Wu Qingyue's handsome face also suppressed the mature manly temperament of Sikong Chen. Since Lin Qiao was not here, Wu Qingyue smiled casually and said, "A zombie emperor will definitely control level 1 or level 2 kings. Let's not worry about that for now. First, we need to kill this zombie emperor, then the rest will be easy." The sky had already darkened, and it would soon be dark. As soon as the sun set, the temperature immediately dropped by 10 to 20 degrees. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to stay outside for long. When the humans could not stand it, the zombies would be affected as well. When the humans could not stand it, the zombies would be affected as well. The temperature was too low, and the zombies became less energetic, and their movements were not as flexible. However, because of the zombie emperor's command, they had no choice but to continue moving forward and climbing up slowly. It's been 6 hours. That's how long it took for the berserk lightning zone to disappear, Ho Guizhong, who was standing behind Sikong Chen, said. He was referring to the chaotic thunder and lightning from before. The lightning that's bombarding the gate this time is clearly different from the previous ones. The previous ones didn't seem to have any control over them. Any electronic equipment would be swallowed by the magnetic field. However, the one at the gate was clearly controlled by the zombie emperor. Then why did it only start to control the thunderstorm now? Lon Lu touched his chin and asked. Perhaps your appearance has caused the zombie emperor to feel a sense of danger, Sikong Chen said with a solemn expression on his face. That's very likely. Wu Qingyue smiled and nodded. Lon Lu glanced at Wu Qingyue with an ambiguous look. Lon Lu was sure that the universal base knew about the zombie emperor's rage. As long as it was the same kind, it would know better than humans. But Lon Lu did not know if Wu Qingyue knew about it from the female zombie leader. Also, Wu Qingyue was chasing after the female leader. But did he know that the female leader was a zombie? After chasing for so long, the female leader seemed to be very resistant. It was obvious that she did not tell him the truth. He didn't know if Wu Qingyue really managed to get her one day, only to find out that she was a female zombie. He could only look at her but not touch her. What kind of expression would she have? Wu Qingyue looked at Lon Lu and felt that the expression of this level 8 psychic was a bit strange. Was this person imagining something strange? When the thunderstorm happened, it must be where the zombie emperor was. Now, we don't know where it is and we can't determine its whereabouts. Then we can only wait for the thunderstorm to happen again and then rush over to surround it. At that time, we will have to trouble Leader Wu to help us deal with the thunderstorm. Sikong Chen thought for a while and looked at Wu Qingyue for advice. No problem. As long as the thunderstorm appears, I will go in and take a look. Who knows, I might be able to kill this zombie emperor without you guys doing anything, Wu Qingyue joked. Everyone smiled and said, isn't it better if that's the case? It will save us a lot of trouble. Although Sikong Chen's serious face was expressionless, he still said lightly, if you can do it, then go ahead. Wu Qingyue shrugged and continued to smile, what if I succeed? The zombie core will belong to me. You guys won't fight with me for it, right? I won't. Sikong Chen shook his head. The others also laughed and shook their heads. It's all about ability. Whoever kills the zombie emperor will naturally get the zombie core. At this time, Lu Jinan coldly snorted and said. Yo, you guys are already talking about the ownership of the zombie core. Speaking of which, are you guys sure you can kill him? What if he is stimulated by you guys and directly evolves to level 9? At this time, a cold female voice with a hint of laughter could be heard. Everyone looked up and saw Lin Qiao with his hands in the pockets of his military jacket walking over with his long legs and military boots. There was a faint smile on his gorgeous face. If he really evolves to level 9, then all of humanity can only gang up on him. When Gao Haoyun saw Lin Qiao, his eyes immediately lit up. Then, she said before the others could say anything. Xikong Chen and the others thought that she was just joking. Only Wu Qingyue and Lan Lu's eyes flashed. Hee, if he really evolves, then even nuclear weapons can't kill him. Even nuclear weapons can't kill it. Lin Qiao sneered at Gao Haoyun and said, "Why don't you give it a try? Throw a nuclear bomb at him." Chapter 785. If I kill the zombie emperor, will Miss Lu accept me? Gao Haoyun smiled evilly, his gaze became unscrupulous as he looked at Lin Qiao. Leader Gao does not seem to care about giving up the Black Dragon base, you even have the mood to flirt with a beauty. Lan Lu laughed and looked at Gao Haoyun with a strange gaze. Gao Haoyun was startled for a moment before he smiled, even if I care, isn't it already occupied by the zombies? Even if he was unhappy, he would not show it to these people. From what I know, the Black Dragon base was attacked by the zombie horde. However, after you left, the other leader seemed to have saved the survivors in the base and was still making a last stand. It is the same now, have you thought of going back? Lan Lu's eyes flashed as he asked. The meaning in his words was, you left your companions there and ran away by yourself, have you never thought of going back to save them? Even if I want to go back, Du Kuanqing might not be willing. After all, the zombie emperor might be staring at me, if I go back, it might be lured back. Gao Haoyun snorted. Because they had to keep an eye on the zombie emperor, no one went to rest. Even if they wanted to rest, it would only be a short nap. However, these were all high-rank metahumans, with their own energy running, not sleeping for a month or two would not affect them. The houses not far away from the city walls were used as temporary resting places for the injured soldiers and metahumans to recuperate. Xikong Chen ordered his men to clear out a living room upstairs. There were enough chairs for people to sit and rest in the room. However, the group did not sleep or rest for the entire night and did not see any signs of a minefield. At this time, Mo Yen was sitting on the roof of a building tens of kilometers away from the Huaxia base. He was not in a good state. Mo Yen did not know that the humans were waiting for him to go berserk, but the appearance of Wu Qingyue and Lin Qiao made him cautious. Previously when he lost control, he was not afraid of the enemy approaching because anyone who approached would be struck by lightning. However, it was different now, the leader of Ocean City was not afraid of lightning. If he lost control again and allowed the leader of Ocean City to approach him, he would be in danger. That was why he had to suppress his anger. But this could not be suppressed at all. Even if the female zombie healed him, it couldn't stop his increasingly irritable mood. That was why he had retreated far away from the Huaxia base when he was about to explode. This way, even if he flared up, Xikong Chen and the others wouldn't be able to find him so quickly. Mo Yen leaned against the wall of the stairwell, his long legs stretched out in front of him. His head hung low in front of his chest. Although she couldn't see his expression, she could tell from his tightly clenched fists that he seemed to be enduring something. Moreover, the veins on his neck became active again, already crawling all over his face. The female zombie squatted next to him and pressed her hand on his shoulder. Her expressionless face was slightly frowning. He tried his best to transfer his energy into Mo Yan's body. Roar! Mo Yan let out a low growl from his throat, as if he was in great pain. When the sun was about to rise, the female zombie's expression suddenly changed. She retracted her hand and immediately retreated. Roar! Mo Yen raised his head and roared with a ferocious face. Boom, rumble, bang, 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 bang. A few chaotic bolts of lightning struck down from the sky, exploding on the surrounding buildings. Following that, black clouds rolled up in the sky, and there were irregular lightning bolts flashing in the clouds. Then it started to rain down one after another. The first bolt had just fallen, but the second had already followed. Then the third, the fourth. In the blink of an eye, there were hundreds and thousands of lightning bolts of all sizes falling down chaotically. The area within a few hundred meters of the square garden was a complete mess. The female zombie dodged very quickly. She only stopped when she was about 700 or 800 meters away from Mo Yen. Her hair and dress were a lot messy. She raised her pair of black eyes that were as black as a panda's, expressionlessly looking at Mo Yan's position. Within a few seconds, the place had turned into a terrifying minefield. The buildings, flowers, and trees in the minefield were all struck into pieces. Then, there were black smoke and flames. The female zombie couldn't understand why her boss would often lose control during this period of time. Even her ability couldn't stop his condition from worsening. Could it be that she was too weak? After all, Mo Yen was already level 8 and was about to break through to level 9, while she was still lingering around level 5. If her level was the same as Mo Yan's, would she be able to suppress Mo Yan's manic behavior? A few figures landed next to the female zombie. They were Mo Yan's subordinates, the level 2 kings. Mo Yen had ordered them to protect the female zombie when he went berserk and didn't know what was going on. Because the female zombie was only level 5, and she was a healer, her strength was too weak. He was afraid that when he went berserk, the female zombie would be killed by humans. Then he would be finished. Mo Yen had given her a lot of zombie cores to level up, but this female zombie's body was too special. She couldn't absorb zombie cores of different types. She could only absorb zombie cores of level 2 or 3 zombies that hadn't awakened their abilities yet. But when she reached level 4 or 5, absorbing zombie cores of level 2 or 3 was much slower than a snail. And to find zombies of the same type, it was even rarer. It was even rarer than the lightning type. Even if there was, it would be very difficult to level up. That was why Mo Yen couldn't do anything about the female zombie's level. Roar dash! Mo Yen's face was twisted, and his purple eyes were wide open. He opened his mouth wide and roared, showing his sharp teeth. As he roared, more and more lightning bolts fell, and the area was getting bigger and bigger. Suddenly, his body twitched, and he threw himself off the roof. Bang! He smashed onto the ground, then climbed up shakily as if nothing had happened. The next second, he rushed to the wall next to him and slammed into it. Bang dash! The wall was smashed by him, and a hole was formed. As he went berserk, the zombies that had been moving towards China's base immediately ran like crazy. Soon, the people in China's base noticed it. The zombies are going berserk. The person in charge of monitoring the situation immediately shouted, because he saw the zombies behind the zombies rushing towards them from afar. Their movements were very fast and crazy, and their expressions were ferocious. As soon as Sikong Chin and the others heard the news, they immediately came out of the building and flashed to the top of the wall. Using the binoculars, they saw the zombies behind them rushing forward like a tide. The zombies are restless, it should be a lightning zone. Sikong Chen immediately looked around with the binoculars, but he didn't see the familiar lightning. Chapter 786. Wu Qingyue looked around and said, "I can't see him from here, he's hiding far away." Sikong Chen put down his binoculars and asked, "Leader Wu, can you sense where he is?" Wu Qingyue looked at the sky, then pointed to a darker part of the sky and said, "Do you see that? The clouds are very low over there. Although it's a bit far, I can feel the power of lightning coming from there. Sikong Chen looked at the clouds over there. It was indeed a bit far. He couldn't help but ask Wu Qingyue, how far is it? Wu Qingyue shook his head, I'm not sure, but at least the direction is correct. Leader Wu, are you sure? Gao Haoyun walked to Sikong Chen's side and looked at Wu Qingyue with some disdain. He looked at him with a face of suspicion. You can choose not to go, but if I go, the corpse core will be mine, Wu Qingyue said to him with a smirk. Then, in a flash, he flew out. Seeing Wu Qingyue fly out by himself, Gao Haoyun and Sikong Chen looked at each other and immediately followed. Leader Wu is young and strong, he's actually quite a good match for you. What, you don't like him? Seeing that the 3 level 8 ability users had rushed out, Lon Lu silently moved to Lin Qiao's side and asked casually. You like him? Then you go. Lin Qiao glanced at him expressionlessly and said, also, why are you so close? Do I know you that well? She took 2 steps to the side and put some distance between Lon Lu and her. No need, I'm heterosexual. Perhaps this is the first time we've met, but I'm not a stranger to you. At least, I don't think other people know as much about you as I do. Lon Lu looked at Lin Qiao and smiled. Lon Lu felt that Lin Qiao's identity as a zombie must be a secret that she kept to herself, especially since it would affect her position among humans. So he felt that Lin Qiao would definitely not let others know about this secret. Lin Qiao saw that he was smiling with ulterior motives and said, oh, then how much do you know, Director Lon? This is not a suitable place to say it. But then again, isn't it dangerous for you to be the leader of a human base? Lon Lu asked. What identity? I don't understand what you're talking about. Lin Qiao looked at him and smiled calmly. Lon Lu didn't pursue the matter. He just shrugged and said, well, then we'll talk about it when you understand. Do you think they'll be able to find the zombie emperor's location and kill him? As he said that, he turned his head and looked in the direction that Sikong Chen and the others had just left. In the battle on China's side, Chen Hao was killed by Qing Wangxue. Lu Tong heaved a sigh of relief after learning that Chen Hao was dead. On the other side, Wang Jian had also received news of Chen Hao's suicidal actions. Although Wang Jian was still an ordinary person who had yet to awaken his special ability, he was still an ordinary person. However, if he was given a weapon, he would definitely have the ability to move freely in the dangerous environment of zombies outside the base. Therefore, as long as he didn't encounter zombies above level 2 or 3, he could be considered powerful. However, his reputation was much stronger than his skills. After all, he was the one who led such a large group of people from the Netherworld King's base to the Universal base. Therefore, the second batch of people that entered the spirit world were mostly led by Wang Jian, forming a group. Wang Jian was tacitly accepted as the leader of the group. This Chen Hao's brain must have short-circuited. He actually dared to offend the vice leader just to kill Lu Tong. Isn't that courting death? Wang Jian sneered. Huang Tiange also laughed, that's right. Now it's time for us to make our move. Wang Jian nodded, then suddenly asked, what's the situation with Qiao Liangting? Qiao Liangting was the ability user that awakened halfway through. After entering the base, he was brought to the isolation room and had been there until now. Huang Tiange said, from what Hai Zi said, it should be soon. Wang Jian sighed and said, I don't know what kind of ability he will awaken. Oh right, I heard that this base is to be built on 2 sides. One side is for humans, but the other isn't. The others don't know what's on the other side, but I have a feeling that this base is different from the others. This base seems to be different from the others, Huang Tiange said. 2 sides. Isn't it supposed to be the outer and inner areas? Wang Jian looked at him strangely, his tough face was a little confused. The current structure of the base was to build a wall around the inner area, and then build an outer area around the inner area. This was the first time he had heard of a base that was divided into two sides. What's more, wasn't the other side inhabited by humans? Huang Tiange suddenly looked to his left and right with a vigilant expression. Then he whispered into Wang Jian's ear, I think that there might be a group of zombies living on the other side. That's because I've also found a secret. There's a plantation not far from this base. I heard that it was personally developed by the female leader. Right now, that place is rich in sweet potatoes, corn, pumpkins, and potatoes. But the workers there aren't humans. I heard that they're all zombies. When Wang Jian heard this, he was stunned for a moment. Then he stared at him in disbelief. Suddenly, his eyes turned, as if he had thought of something, and his expression relaxed. He nodded and said, That's possible. Because when we came in, weren't we blocked by a group of strange zombies? And there was also that strange female zombie. Don't you think that female zombie's IQ is too high? If it wasn't for the fact that her face looked like a zombie's, her actions wouldn't have been anything like a zombie's. Huang Tiange also nodded his head. Thinking of that female zombie, he immediately said with a bitter expression, She even threw me. Ha ha ha, look at her impatient expression at that time. Who told you guys to dawdle around? Wang Jian laughed as he recalled the scene at that time. I'm just scared. Who has ever seen such a human-like zombie before? As soon as she got close to me, I was scared silly. Huang Tiange said awkwardly. For a young lad in his 20s, this was the first time he had ever seen a zombie that would slap the hood of a car and chase people away. Alright, don't talk about this kind of thing. Don't ask about things that you shouldn't ask about, lest you attract unnecessary trouble. Wang Jian waved his hand and said. Understood. Huang Tiange nodded his head. Since Chen Hao is dead, then we'll pay more attention to Lu Tong and Li Honglin's movements. For the time being, don't provoke them. First, we need to establish a firm foothold here. Before entering the base, we'll slowly settle the debt of capturing our people to lure the zombies. Wang Jian crossed his arms and his expression became cold. Yes. I'll warn everyone. Huang Tiange replied. Right at this time, someone ran over to the two of them and said happily, Captain, Qiao Liangting is awake. Wang Jian and Huang Tiange's eyes lit up. They immediately stood up and said, Let's go take a look. Chapter 787. In the awakening isolation room, Lin Hao and a few nurses stood by the bed and asked about Qiao Liangting's situation. How do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Qiao Liangting was a very thin man lying on the bed. His face was pale, but his spirit was not bad. His eyes looked very spirited. He shook his head and said with a weak and hoarse voice, There's no discomfort. Thank you. Lin Hao helped him check his body and found that his body was better than when he was first sent here. Moreover, he was full of spirit. Even if his face was as pale as paper, one could see that he was full of vitality. It was said that before this person awakened, he was about to die from illness. In the end, no one knew how he managed to survive until he reached their base, and then awakened. This journey to the gates of hell was full of twists and turns. But was it also a blessing in disguise? After the examination, Lin Hao said to Qiao Liangting with a faint expression, Your body is recovering very well now. Rest well. When your ability just awakened, it may not feel as clear as now. Slowly, you will be able to feel the flow of energy in your body. Qiao Liangting smiled slightly. Although his face was so thin that there was not much meat on it, if one looked carefully, one would find that his facial features were still very good. When he smiled, he looked much better. Lin Hao's expression was indifferent. He just nodded and did not say anything more. At this time, the people who went out with Lin Feng to collect resources encountered trouble. Bang dash, this was next to a park. A huge fireball exploded on the metal collar, and it was wildly twitching countless vines. Every time they came out, they would bring grass balls stained with Lin Xiao's blood, so zombies generally avoided them when they saw them. Only these mutants would ignore the pressure in Lin Xiao's blood and attack them. Originally, the level 7 fire element was already very strong, but when it encountered the level 7 mutant vine, Lin Feng's chances of winning were not high. Originally, Wood was afraid of fire, but when the level 7 vine used its countless vine tentacles to cover the entire park, even if Lin Feng's flame hit these moving and attacking vines, it could not ignite them. That was because this vine was of the metal element. Of course, metal was also afraid of fire. However, when the same level metal element met the fire element, the human side's power was weaker. The swinging vine tentacles turned into steel-like tentacles that could kill anyone who stood in their way. Clang! Long Qingying held her katana with both hands and slashed at the metal vine that was as thick as an arm. Ugh! The recoil from the collision caused her hands to tremble violently. Long Qingying almost let go of the saber in her hand. Long Qingying gritted her teeth, and her face turned red. Her metal ability was completely useless here. The metal attribute of the vine suppressed her ability attack and even absorbed her energy. That's right, they had come for her from the very beginning. The energy aura of the same attribute woke the vine up, and it suddenly launched an attack when they passed by. In front of this level 7 metal attribute mutant plant, bullets were naturally useless. He could only use his abilities to attack. What should we do? If this goes on, leader, vice leader, and leader Long won't be able to hold on. Lin Yu, who was standing beside Lin Wenwen, looked anxiously at the battle a few hundred meters away. Lin Wenwen was also very anxious. She kept her binoculars and stared at the battle, but she forced herself to calm down. She knew that their strength was not enough, so she could only retreat far away. Long Qingying was getting more and more perilous under the attack of countless metal vines. Her brother was also entangled and could not escape to save Long Qingying. On the other side, there was Li Zheng who could not freeze the wildly swinging vines even with his ice ability. Lin Wenwen felt her breathing quicken. What should I do? What should I do? What was the weakness of the metal element? It was even more troublesome when the wood and metal elements were mixed together. What was the weakness of such a large group of metal vines? Lin Wenwen wished that she was a physics student in the past. Maybe she could have known what kind of plant this was, or maybe she could have known the weakness of this vine. But it was useless to think about that now. Because this was a mutated plant. And it was level 7. Because of the sudden attack of this huge vine, more than half of Lin Feng's team was directly killed. Fortunately, Lin Feng's reaction was fast. Although he blocked some of the attacks in time, only 1/3 of the people were saved. And Lin Wenwen's reaction was much more agile after the previous persistent training, so she was not wrapped up by those metal vines and dragged away. Then, with the help of Lin Yu, Li Zheng, and the others, they quickly retreated from the danger zone. Now that they had evacuated the danger zone, they could only watch Lin Feng and Long Qingying fight on the side. I'm afraid that if they can't hold on until the leader comes to rescue. Feng Mingyu's face was a little pale, and she looked at Lin Wenwen in panic. This place is more than 100 kilometers away from the base. If they can come with my sister's speed, there will be no problem. If only Lily was also in the base. Now I'm more worried about whether my sister will be in the base. Lin Wenwen bit her finger, and her face and forehead were fine beads of sweat. The possibility was also very high. The other people's faces also turned pale. At this time, a thought flashed across Lin Wenwen's mind, and she murmured, If only I could bring people into the space like my sister. Even if you can bring people into the space, you can't get close to them. You can't save them like this. Lin Yu reminded her. Lin Wenwen was stunned, and her eyes were a little red as she looked at Lin Yu. Then, she turned her head, and looked ahead absent-mindedly. Then what should I do? What should I do? Ching ching. Big brother. At this time, Lin Wenwen suddenly hated herself for being too weak. Too weak. Although she couldn't see Lin Feng and the others clearly from a distance of a few hundred meters, she could clearly see the huge shining cold metal vine. Lin Wenwen's mind was a little confused, and she stared at the mutated vine that was swinging its countless vines in a frenzy. One moment, her mind was filled with the scene of Long Qingying and Lin Feng fighting. The next moment, she thought that her sister would be able to come, and the next moment, she thought about what to do if her sister was not in the base. Then, she thought about how it would be better if they didn't pass by here. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind, and Lin Wenwen felt like her head was going to explode. At this time, Lin Yu suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no!" Deputy Leader. Lin Wenwen reflexively took out the binoculars to look, and saw that Lin Feng's chest was penetrated by a thick metal vine. No! Big brother. Lin Wenwen's mind exploded, and her mind was shaken. Suddenly, she felt dizzy, and the whole world was blurred. Chapter 788. Just when Lin Feng's chest was penetrated by the metal vines, his body stiffened. Lin Qiao, who was far away in Huaxia, felt a strange feeling rise in her heart. This feeling made Lin Qiao feel uncomfortable, as if a hard stone had suddenly blocked her heart. But very quickly, this feeling immediately disappeared. Lin Qiao felt that the uncomfortable feeling in her heart was just an illusion. Lin Wenwen felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. What's wrong? Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm, and a familiar cold female voice came from beside her ear. Lin Wenwen shook her head, and her expression suddenly froze. Then, she quickly turned her head to look at Long Qingying, who was supporting her, puzzled. Long Qingying saw that her expression was a little strange, and couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Lin Wenwen looked at her blankly for a few seconds, and suddenly turned her head to look around, and then realized that she was sitting in a room. The somewhat familiar environment in front of her stunned her, and she couldn't quite react. What's wrong? Lin Feng, who was sitting by the window drinking water, heard Long Qingying's voice, turned his head to look at her, and saw that his sister's expression was a little dazed. He couldn't help but ask. Lin Wenwen blinked, and then took a deep breath. She suddenly stood up, ran to the window, and looked out, then raised her arm to look at her watch. Sure enough, it showed that it was 11:30 in the afternoon. However, when they were attacked by the metal vines just now, it was already past 4 in the afternoon. And here, before they encountered the metal vines, was about 20 to 30 kilometers away from the park. Moreover, before they were attacked by the metal vines, they had also rested in this place in the morning. Lin Wenwen's heart was beating a little fast. She looked left and right, and then looked at everyone in the room. Everyone was there, and no one was missing. "Brother, hit me." She suddenly turned to Lin Feng, who was next to her, and said urgently. Lin Feng. After looking at Lin Wenwen in silence for 3 seconds, Lin Feng turned his head to look at the others, with an expression that said, "Is this girl okay?" At this moment, everyone's attention was attracted by Lin Wenwen's sudden action. When they saw Miss Lin asking the deputy leader to hit her, and when they saw Lin Feng looking at them blankly, they were all dumbfounded. "Brother, quick, hit me. Let's see if I'm dreaming." However, Lin Wenwen did not notice the expressions on everyone's faces. She anxiously pulled Lin Feng's arm and raised it to her face. Lin Feng, no matter how calm he was, Lin Feng couldn't help but look at Lin Wenwen as if he was looking at a lunatic. Hurry up and fight. Forget it. Seeing that his brother was ignoring him, Lin Wenwen simply raised his hand and flung it at her delicate face. Pa! The crisp sound of a slap stunned everyone once again. Ouch! Lin Wenwen cried out in pain. Then, he suddenly raised his hand and quickly grabbed onto Lin Feng's clothes. He stared at him with wide eyes and cried, "Brother." Woo! This time, Lin Feng was dumbfounded again. He threw away the moisturizing cup in his hand and stared at his sister, who had suddenly burst into tears. What's wrong? Why are you crying? Lin Feng looked at Lin Wenwen with a head full of question marks. The adult man in his 40s turned to look at the others helplessly. Long Qingying and the others also came over and looked at Lin Wenwen with concern. What's wrong, miss? Tell us. Why are you crying all of a sudden? Lin Wenwen's mind was filled with the scene of Lin Feng's chest being pierced by the metal vines. The fear in her heart could not be erased no matter how hard she tried. Seeing that Lin Feng was still standing in front of her, alive and well, she even couldn't believe it. Everyone looked at each other with a blank look on their faces. Fortunately, Lin Wenwen quickly stopped crying. Then, she wiped her tears and looked at everyone again to confirm. What's going on? Long Qingying couldn't help but frown as she looked at her friend. Lin Wenwen shook her head and quickly wiped away the traces of tears on her face. She gradually calmed down, but her hands did not let go of Lin Feng's clothes. What's going on? Why did she suddenly return to a few hours ago? Could it be that the metal vines and the scene behind them were all her hallucinations? Or was she dreaming? Impossible. It felt so real. It couldn't be a dream, nor was it an illusion. When she woke up from a dream, there would be a sense of distortion, but she didn't feel it at all. What was going on? Lin Wenwen didn't understand what was going on either. She suddenly raised her head and asked Lin Feng, "Brother, which way should we go back in the afternoon?" This way. Lin Feng took out a map and pointed to a location. Lin Wenwen looked and it was indeed the road that they had walked before. Then, in the afternoon, they were suddenly attacked. Because they had Lin Qiao's blood breath to protect them, they were a lot less guarded against low-level zombies. Instead, they were vigilant of places with forests and mountains to avoid meeting mutants. So, they would usually avoid places that were close to the city parks or forests. When they encountered the metal vines, they actually wanted to avoid the park. But there was only one main road there, the others were all small roads. Their truck couldn't pass through unless they took a long detour. But if they took a detour, it would take at least 3 to 4 hours. So, Lin Feng decided to be more vigilant and pass through the park as soon as possible. But he didn't expect that Long Qingying's metal energy would be sensed by the metal vines. As a result, they suffered a devastating attack. Lin Wenwen slightly lowered her head, hiding the emotions in her eyes. Then, she slowly raised her head and looked at the map in Lin Feng's hand. She pointed to another road and said, "Brother, let's go this way." Lin Feng looked at her strangely, and then looked at the others blankly. He saw that everyone was also looking at him strangely. Then, he looked down and asked Lin Wenwen, "Why? If we go this way, we might not be able to get back to the base until noon tomorrow. If they went the way he pointed out, they would be able to get back to the base at 9 or 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." Lin Wenwen raised her head and looked at him, then looked at Long Qingying who was also confused. Then, she said, "Let's go this way. I remember I heard that there was a cement factory in this town. Let's go this way and see if we can find it." She casually told a small lie. She couldn't just say that Lin Feng's road was dangerous, right? Then, Lin Feng definitely wouldn't believe her, and he wouldn't listen to her. Then, in order to make Lin Feng believe her, she would have to spend a lot of time explaining the situation. But if she said that she could predict that they would be in danger 5 or 6 hours later, and that they would die here, who would believe her? Especially Lin Feng, who was a soldier, he wouldn't believe her. Chapter 789. In order to get Lin Feng to agree with her, Lin Wenwen immediately thought of using the thing that Lin Feng wanted to find to attract him. The wall of the base was still under construction, and Lin Feng had been collecting the cement mixture. So, it would be easier to convince him with this reason. Because this was her brother, and she knew him well. Sure enough, upon hearing Lin Wenwen's words, Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he agreed readily. Really? Okay, let's go this way. Lin Wenwen secretly heaved a sigh of relief. But what happened to you just now? Lin Feng pointed at the red claw mark on her face and asked curiously. She slapped herself and grabbed his nose to cry. He was scared to death, okay. Lin Wenwen was stunned, and then she turned her head to see everyone looking at her as if she was crazy. She could only smile awkwardly and say, "No, nothing. I don't know why I thought of something bad just now. My brain twitched, and I didn't react in time." Ha! Ha! Everyone had a look of confusion on their faces. Lin Wenwen tried to fool everyone, but she was confused about what was going on. Perhaps everything that had happened to her before was fake. If it was fake, why did it feel so real? But if it was real, why did she return to the time before it happened? No matter how she thought about it, she still didn't quite understand the current situation. Maybe when she returned to the base, she could talk to Big Sister about it, or let Big Sister go to the park to see if there was really a metal vine. If there was, then what she saw and what happened before was real. If there wasn't, then she might be thinking too much, and maybe she was hallucinating. But unexpectedly, a few hours later, Lin Feng and the others actually found a cement factory in the town that Lin Wenwen had pointed out. There really was one. Lin Wenwen was speechless. This was really just an excuse she came up with in the morning. Originally, she wanted to come here in the afternoon, and if Lin Feng didn't find the cement factory, she would say that she might have remembered wrongly. But unexpectedly, after arriving here, they temporarily rested, and when Li Zheng led the team to search around, they actually found a small cement brick factory. On the other side, Lin Qiao still didn't know what Lin Wenwen had encountered this time. She only felt a strange feeling flash past her heart. And then there was nothing. I don't know how long Du Kuanqing and the survivors of the Black Dragon base can hold on. Lan Lu stood beside her, both of them looking into the distance. Worried? Then why didn't you bring your men to save the situation? Lin Qiao looked ahead and said with an indifferent expression. She felt that Du Kuanqing was not a simple person. After all, Du Kuanqing's management experience was much richer than that of Gao Haoyun, a selfish person who did not care about anything. Moreover, his reputation in the Black Dragon base was also higher. They had an underground base and hundreds of thousands of people. Moreover, most of the zombies had been brought over by Mo Yen, leaving only a small portion of the ordinary zombies. It shouldn't be too difficult to clean them up. After all, they still had a lot of ability users among them. The metahumans that Mo Yen killed were all targeted, they were not randomly killed. Therefore, he didn't kill many people, only a few hundred in total. Out of the total number of adepts in the base, they probably accounted for only 1/10 of them. Therefore, there was no need to worry about zombies, and the living place could be slowly moved up from underground. The only difficulty was finding food. Perhaps not long after, Du Kuanqing would also send people to other bases to exchange for some food. The possibility in China was not high, so the Meng tribe was closer, and Sea City was further away, which could be her base. Anyway, as long as there was a possibility, and there was hope, Du Kuanqing would not give up the Black Dragon base. Lin Qiao thought of this, and Lan Lu also thought of it. However, Lan Lu's words just now were obviously to tease her, so she casually retorted. Lin Qiao could not see through this man's thoughts, nor could she sense it. However, the other party's eyes told her that he seemed to have something to ask of her, as if he was plotting something. But why did the way he expressed it feel a little strange? Lin Qiao felt that it was better not to get too close to this person. It's too far. And we don't have enough manpower in the base. Lan Lu sighed and smiled. Me too, it's too far, and we don't have enough manpower. Lin Qiao shrugged and threw his words back. On this side, Lin Qiao and Lan Lu were testing each other, while on the other side, Wu Qingyue and the other two quickly rushed towards Mo Yan's location. The further they went, the clearer Wu Qingyue could feel the power of the lightning. Dozens of kilometers, in just a few minutes, Wu Qingyue and the other two saw the area that was constantly being bombarded by lightning. Roar! Sensing a powerful enemy approaching, the zombie kings around Mo Yan immediately roared and became alert. The female zombie quickly retreated, she did not want to be killed by a strong human. One of the 5-level second kings and 2-level first kings immediately flashed to the side of the female zombie, protecting her as they quickly left the area. The other zombies did not dare to face the 3 people head-on, so they all retreated to the side and watched. First, they wanted to see if these people could rush into Mo Yan's lightning area. Second, if these humans were injured in Mo Yan's lightning area, maybe they could go up and give them a few claw attacks. At this time, Mo Yan was kneeling on the ground, his head was tightly pressed on his knees, and his hands were curled up into a ball. Crack, rumbled, bang bang, bang bang, bang bang, bang bang, bang bang dash, lightning was falling everywhere around him, causing dust and stones to fly everywhere. He did not seem to notice the incoming enemies, and only curled up on the ground. Suddenly, he turned over and roared angrily as he rolled on the ground. Roar dash, there were all kinds of lightning falling from the sky, some were very thin, enough to blow up a small stone. The thick ones were also very thick as a thigh, enough to split a tree or blow up a building. When they arrived at the lightning area, they found that it covered a large area. Xikong Chen and Gao Haoyun could not sense Mo Yan's location because of the magnetic field of the lightning area. The two looked at Wu Qingyue at the same time. Wu Qingyue looked at the flashing lightning in front of him, as well as the countless falling lightning. He reached out his hand and threw a lightning into the lightning area, then quietly waited for something. After a few seconds, Wu Qingyue's eyes lit up, and he reached out his hands towards the lightning area in front of him. Then, they saw his hands shoot out a few lightning bolts into the lightning area, mixing with the big and small lightning rain. Xikong Chen and Gao Haoyun looked at him in confusion, and quietly waited on the side. Chapter 790. Lan Lu seemed to be very interested in Lin Qiao and always talked to her. Why are you here? I thought you would be very busy since the base has only been open for half a year. Lan Lu stood next to Lin Qiao and asked her with a smile. Busy with what? What should be done has been done. Let the others handle the rest. Lin Qiao looked at him and said faintly. She didn't mention the purpose of her visit. On the other side, Lu Jinan said to Hong Yijie next to him, I think some people came here just to hook up. His voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. After saying that, he glanced in Lin Qiao's direction meaningfully. Most of the people here were level 6 or 7. Which one of them didn't have sharp ears? Their hearing was at least 10 times better than a normal person's. Lin Qiao's hearing was the most sensitive among the people present. Naturally, he heard every single word. She could also hear the sarcasm in the words. Hong Yijie looked at Lu Jinan's gloomy face and then at Lin Qiao, who was being glanced at by Lu Jinan. He knew that Lu Jinan was very concerned about Lin Qiao poisoning Hu Zhiyong. Now that Hu Zhiyong died, Lu Jinan was even more concerned. He looked at the woman who pretended not to hear him and replied, "You can't say for sure. She came to help out of goodwill," Hong Yijie said as he waved his hand down the wall. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding metal wreckage rose to the top of the wall, and then rapidly twisted into countless sharp shapes. Then it instantly shot out like a rain of metal arrows towards the tide of zombies that were surging up from below. Roar, 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 puff, 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 some of the zombies below had their heads pierced by finger-sized metal arrows. Then their bodies stiffened and they fell down. Lu Jinan said disdainfully, "Her ability is poison. What's the use against zombies? Do zombies fear poison?" Bang! Wei Haichao, who was next to him, once again threw out a handful of seeds from his hand, and then used his special ability to hasten the growth of small vines, growing wildly. "Hey, Lu Jinan, why don't you use an earth crack to block the zombies' charge? Look at those who are rushing over from behind, it's like they've gone crazy. It's very annoying to fight wave after wave." Wei Haichao suddenly shouted at Lu Jinan with a face full of annoyance. Lu Jimian frowned as he looked at the horde of zombies that were rushing towards him like a tidal wave. In the end, he didn't say anything. He stretched out his hands and pressed in that direction. Soon, the ground started to shake. Then, a horizontal line appeared on the ground 100 meters in front of the base's wall. The horizontal line became wider and wider, and then the zombies on the side of the horizontal line fell into it. None of the people who rushed up from behind were spared. They all fell into the hole and disappeared. Lu Jinan's move immediately broke the momentum of the zombie wave, allowing the metahumans and soldiers below to breathe a sigh of relief. An Earth-type ability user would be able to unleash a terrifying might at a high level. If it reached the 8th level, would it be able to cause a small-scale earthquake or something? Just looking at how far the two sides of Lu Jinan's crack extended, it was very suitable to deal with these zombies. Lin Qiao pretended not to hear Hong Yijie and Lu Jinan's discussion. She looked at the direction where Wu Qingyue and the others left and narrowed her eyes. After thinking for a moment, she directly jumped down from the wall. Duan Wan, Shen Yuzhen, and the others, who had been standing behind her, also jumped down. They chased after Lin Qiao and quickly rushed to the edge of the crack. They did not stop and directly jumped over. After jumping over the several meters wide crack, Lin Qiao and the others jumped on top of the zombie horde. They accurately stepped on the zombies' heads and rushed to the building outside the vacuum zone. Lin Qiao had been restraining her aura, so these zombies weren't affected. Shen Yuzhen was also a zombie, so the zombies directly ignored her existence. As for Duan Wan and the others, because they were all carrying something stained with Lin Qiao's blood, the zombies didn't attack them. So Lin Qiao quickly rushed through the vacuum zone with them and went to the surrounding rooftops, then quickly rushed out into the distance. What is she doing? Does she regret coming here and wants to retreat now? Wei Haichao looked at the back of Lin Qiao and the others strangely. Hong Yijie looked in that direction and said, "That direction is the direction where the leader and the others left. Maybe she went to help." Help? What can a woman like her help with? I think she's going to be a burden. If she really went to the leader's battlefield, I don't know what her purpose is. Lu Jinan snorted disdainfully. He reached into his pocket and took out a pack of cigarettes. He took one out and lit it. Lei Qing looked at Lan Lu and asked, "You're not going to follow?" Lan Lu shook his head and said, "I'll come back." Lei Qing asked him in a low voice, "Did you see anything?" Lon Lu continued to shake his head and sighed, she's immune to my ability. My spirit ability doesn't have much effect on her. Can't you see that she's not affected? Lei Qing nodded. He seemed to understand and said with some surprise, it seems that she really isn't simple. She could even ignore Lon Lu's level 8 spirit hypnosis. Could it be because of her physique? That's right, every word Lon Lu said to Lin Qiao just now was mixed with his own special ability. If it was an ordinary special ability user, under his powerful level 8 nervous system, his mind and thoughts would also be disturbed. Even if they weren't completely controlled, they would more or less be affected. However, the female leader had been acting normal since the beginning. It seemed that his ability was not affected at all through the guidance of words. Moreover, the other party kept looking into the distance and did not look at him. Even when they occasionally met, it was just a glance. Of course, otherwise how would you manage so many people in a base in the future? Lon Lu looked at him with a faint smile. That's right. If you don't have some ability, how would you be able to build a base? Lei Qing nodded. On the other side, Lin Qiao quickly led Duan Wan and the others in the direction of Wu Qingyue and the others. Her speed was neither fast nor slow. On one hand, she was worried that her subordinates would not be able to keep up. On the other hand, she was not afraid that Wu Qingyue and the others would end the battle so quickly. Not long after, they gradually felt a violent energy fluctuation in front of them. The energy of a level 8 ability user was not just for show. Sand and stones flew around them, and the air flow caused by the energy became chaotic. The atmosphere around them was very oppressive and uneasy. There was also the sound of thunder coming from afar. When they looked up, they saw a thick layer of dark clouds in the sky. Lightning constantly fell from the dark clouds, illuminating half of the sky. Chapter 791. Boom boom, boom boom, boom boom dash, a series of explosions mixed with the thunder. Aside from the violent energy of the thunder, there were also two auras. One was cold, and the other was hot. The energies were restless, and they were trying to devour each other. You guys stay here, Lin Qiao said to them and disappeared in a flash. The closer they got, the clearer they could see what was happening. Only when he got closer could Lin Qiao sense that the thunderbolts that were rumbling and exploding were also divided into two forces. One of them was very violent, and it kept striking down from the sky. The frequency was chaotic, but it was concentrated and dense, and its power varied. The lightning was so bright that it almost blinded people. From the power of the thunder and lightning, it seemed that the area had been flattened into ruins. The other thunder and lightning seemed to be trying to control the violent thunder and lightning. However, the first one was too violent and powerful. The second one seemed to be having a hard time. Meanwhile, the other two were dodging around the minefield, attacking a single target while dodging the lightning bolts that fell from above their heads. It was too dangerous to do two things at once. Xikong Chen and Gao Haoyun's attacks were clearly much weaker, as most of their abilities were used to block the lightning that struck their heads from time to time. Wu Qingyue, can't you control it all? Gao Haoyun's exasperated voice could be heard. Even though I want to, the energy in this thundercloud is much stronger than mine. If we don't kill the zombie emperor and stop its energy transfer, then I can't do anything. Wu Qingyue's voice could be heard, but it was a lot colder. Bang! Another loud explosion rang out. A fireball and a bolt of lightning exploded into a ball of fire. Roar dash, from time to time, the roars of zombies could be heard. At this time, Mo Yan's eyes were filled with purple light, and the darkness of zombies had been squeezed out. However, his expression was crazy, and his shoulders were arched, and he was on all fours. His claws were long, and his black nails had grown out. Whenever he saw someone, he would pounce on them with his teeth bared, just like a humanoid beast. Sikong Chen and Gao Haoyun did not dare to get too close and maintained a distance from the zombie emperor while using their abilities to attack it. Seeing that he was about to pounce on her, she immediately retreated. However, Mo Yan's speed was extremely fast. Like a gust of black wind, he rushed forward. Not even his afterimage could be seen, and he arrived next to Gao Haoyun. Right now, he was delirious, but his instinctive sense of danger was still there. Moreover, he could also recognize Gao Haoyun's aura. This aura made his heart extremely agitated, and he wanted to attack. Therefore, Mo Yan kept chasing after Gao Haoyun, attacking him with his claws. The body of a level 8 zombie emperor was already much stronger than a mutant beast. The strength of its muscles and the flexibility of its bones allowed it to smash a hole in the ground with a single claw. And he didn't need to dodge the enemy's attacks at all. Therefore, when Gao Haoyun's ice blades, ice arrows, and ice awls pierced his body, they immediately shattered into ice shards. Even if he could seize the opportunity to freeze Mo Yan, he would not be able to last more than 3 seconds before being blown apart. Moreover, Mo Yan's speed was too fast, and Gao Haoyun did not have many chances to freeze him. Looks like we can only wait until he runs out of energy. Sikong Chen's figure flashed past, and said in a low voice. Wu Qingyue stood calmly at the side, watching the two of them dodge awkwardly. He could only silently release the lightning into the thunderclouds, covering them with the flashing lightning. Lin Qiao watched for a while, and realized that they could not take down Mo Yan in a short period of time. Then, she also saw Mo Yan's state. That berserk aura had actually become similar to that of a normal zombie. Moreover, the energy on his body was also very violent, and was being released in an overbearing manner. As for the thunderclouds in the sky, they were real thunderclouds. They were not formed by Mo Yan's energy, they were just natural thunderclouds. They were just drawn over by Mo Yan's energy. The energy in the thunderclouds was much more tyrannical than Mo Yan's own energy, which was why Wu Qingyue could not integrate it and control it. She watched the battle from the side, and after seeing the situation clearly, she turned her head and looked around. The king zombies that were following Mo Yan earlier were hiding in the surroundings, and seemed to be watching from afar. However, the female zombie was gone, the rank 2 king zombies were also missing, and the rank 1 king zombies were missing. Lin Qiao's eyes flashed, and she was wondering why the strength of Mo Yan's subordinates had decreased by so much. However, she quickly frowned, because she felt it. The 4 rank 2 king zombies here were actually about to break through to rank 8. If these rank 7 king zombies were to fight Gao Haoyun and Sikong Chen in pairs, they might not be able to defeat a rank 8 metahuman, but they could at least fight to a draw. Level 7 zombies are already able to fight against level 8 paranormals without falling into a disadvantageous position. However, the current Sikong Chen was already at late rank 8 physique stage, and the power of his fire energy was not low. On the other hand, Gao Haoyun and Wu Qingyue had just reached rank 8 not too long ago. If it was not for Wu Qingyue's special ability, he would have a hard time dealing with 2 rank 2 king zombies. However, Gao Haoyun was different, he was an ice elemental, and could be said to be weaker in terms of energy. Therefore, Mo Yan's subordinates did not need to be afraid of the 3 rank 8 metahumans, but why did they hide so far away? Not going to help. It seems like they were not worried about Mo Yan. Well, maybe these zombies still do not know what it means to be worried. Lin Qiao shifted her gaze back to the battlefield, and looked up at the thunderclouds in the sky. Suddenly, she thought of something. That's right, the lightning on the thunderclouds is uncontrollable. Therefore, these king zombies were actually afraid of being struck by the lightning if they came forward to help. So these king zombies were afraid of being struck by the natural lightning on the thunderclouds, that's why they did not come forward to help. Moreover, looking at Mo Yan's frenzied appearance, the power of his attack was very strong. Bang! Just as she was thinking, Gao Haoyun suddenly did not manage to dodge in time, and was sent flying by Mo Yan's palm, smashing into the wall beside him. Even the wall collapsed from the impact. Several lightning bolts struck down from his head, but Wu Qingyue on the other side waved his hand, and the lightning bolts that were about to land on Gao Haoyun's head immediately shifted to the side, exploding a few meters away from Gao Haoyun. "Be careful, Gao Haoyun. The other party knows you." Wu Qingyue's smiling voice transmitted over, but most of it was covered by the surrounding lightning. However, Gao Haoyun could guess what he meant, because from the moment they came in, this crazy zombie emperor had not let go of him, ignoring the other two. Cough cough, Gao Haoyun coughed twice, and then suddenly rolled away from the ground. He quickly rolled to the side and left the corner of the collapsed wall. Bang! Mo Yan directly pounced over, blasting a large hole in the corner. Chapter 792. Lin Wenwen, who returned to the periphery of the base, found that when she got closer to the time when they had the accident, the memory in her mind became more and more strange. The previous strong sense of reality gradually became blurred, and the scene of them fighting with the metal vines became more and more illusory. Lin Wenwen was very confused. She didn't know whether she had really experienced it, or it was just her illusion or a dream. When they reached the periphery of the zombie defense line, a figure stood in the middle of the road. The zombies that originally blocked the road had now separated into two sides, making way for them. The figure standing in the middle of the road was an old man. His white hair was neatly combed to the back of his head, meticulously. The old man wore a black cloud-patterned tang suit, his hands behind his back, and his back was slightly bent. If it wasn't for the pair of black eyes under the glasses, with a pair of silver pupils in the middle, it would have been impossible for them to recognize him. They would have thought that he was really an old man. "Hey, did Grandpa Gua come to pick us up today? You guys are back too." Seeing the old man, Lin Feng and the others stopped the car. Lin Wenwen jumped out of the car. The old man had gone out with Chiu Lily and Elmar. Now he appeared here. It meant that they had also returned to the base. The old man glanced at the motorcade behind her. Li Zheng stuck his head out from the passenger seat. "How is it, Grandpa Gua? Is there a problem?" He meant to ask if anyone in Grandpa Gua's team was infected. Grandpa Gua shook his head and said, "Let's go." His voice was as hoarse as the other zombies. Then he stepped aside, looked at Lin Wenwen and asked, "How's the harvest?" Lin Wenwen shook her head and said, "Not much, but it's okay." The old man nodded and said, "The leader is not in the base these 2 days." Lin Wenwen was shocked, and suddenly thought that if Lin Qiao was not in the base when they were attacked by the metal vines, then what should they do? So they might not be able to wait for the reinforcements. "Let's go back." The old man pointed to the car that Lin Wenwen just got out of. Lin Wenwen nodded and turned to get in the car. She turned back and saw Grandpa Gua's figure flashed and disappeared. After the motorcade passed, the zombies returned to their positions and continued to stand guard. The old man, who had leaped onto the roof of the nearby building, muttered, "Where did this damn brat go? What a neglect of duty." It turned out that this was originally the location of the little boy zombie Aussie, but the old man came over to tease him today, and in the end, the little boy got angry and ran away. At this moment, the old man smelled the scent of Lin Feng and the others from afar, so he stayed behind to see if they were all right. After returning to the base, he passed through the gate. Everyone immediately went back to their respective homes to hand in their missions. After checking the inventory, Lin Wenwen returned to his residence to rest. However, he bumped into someone in the hall. "Ah yeah." The scream came from the other party. Lin Wenwen didn't expect to see a person coming at her as soon as she turned the corner. She reacted in time and leaned to the side. The other party didn't expect to bump into someone so suddenly. He overreacted and took a step back. As a result, he didn't manage to stop himself and slipped. He fell. Are you all right? Lin Wenwen looked at the unfamiliar young man who had fallen to the ground with concern. He was handsome, thin, and of medium height. His face was a little pale, and he looked a little sick. I'm fine. Lu Tong got up from the ground and patted the dust off his butt. When he looked up, he saw a delicate and pretty little face. It's good that you're fine. Lin Wenwen looked at him with a gentle smile and nodded. Then, she turned and left. Lu Tong looked at her back view as she left, and his eyes flickered. A ray of light flashed past. On the other side, Lin Wenwen, who had walked a few steps, slowed down slightly. Her brows were tightly knitted. When she saw the young man just now, a blurry image flashed through her mind. She didn't pay much attention to it just now. Now that she was separated from him, the image in her mind immediately became clear. After the other party walked a distance away, Lin Wenwen turned back to look at the other party's back view. With this look, the image in her mind became even clearer. It was a dimly lit room. She saw a man lying on the wrinkled quilt on the bed. Half of the man's face was buried under the quilt, and the other half was exposed. Lin Wenwen stared closely at that half of the face. It was actually the half of the face that she couldn't be more familiar with. She had been silently looking at this face for a few years. It was half of Yuan Tianqing's handsome face. After seeing this half of the familiar face, the image in Lin Wenwen's mind became a lot clearer. Especially Yuan Tianqing's half-closed eyes and his motionless body lying on the bed. Where was this? Where was this place? This wasn't Yuan Tianqing's room. Then why was he sleeping here? This room looked small and unfamiliar. Whose room was this? Before Lin Wenwen could figure it out, she saw a person walk in from the bottom left corner of the image. It was a young man. The young man walked to Yuan Tianqing's side and turned around. Lin Wenwen saw his face. It was the young man who had bumped into her earlier. Then, the next scene made Lin Wenwen's eyes widen. Her breathing quickened, and a wave of anger rose in her. Because she saw the young man walk to Yuan Tianqing's side, bend over, and start to take off his clothes. Until Yuan Tianqing was naked, he took off his own clothes and climbed onto the bed. The young man got onto the bed and lay next to Yuan Tianqing. As he pulled the quilt, he pulled Yuan Tianqing's naked body on top of him. Yuan Tianqing didn't move at all. His eyes were closed as if he was unconscious. The young man pulled Yuan Tianqing on top of him. Just like that, the two of them faced each other naked under the quilt. At this moment, Lin Wenwen felt dizzy. Her body swayed for a moment before she woke up. She realized that the image in her mind had disappeared. Lin Wenwen's face turned from green to red, and then from red to white. Her breathing quickened, and her chest heaved up and down. She couldn't suppress the anger in her heart. She suppressed the emotions in her heart, raised her head abruptly, and ran to Yuan Tianqing's office. While thinking about what was going on in the image just now, she ran to the door of Yuan Tianqing's office. The door was open, and she saw Yuan Tianqing sitting at the desk with his head down, working. Lin Wenwen suddenly didn't dare to go in. She quickly turned around and took a few steps back. Lu Junjie, who was guarding the door and was about to greet her, opened his mouth and looked at her with a puzzled expression. Seeing that Yuan Tianqing was sitting in the office, she suddenly felt relieved. But the image in her mind really made her feel uncomfortable. She had to figure it out. Lin Wenwen, who had calmed down, looked back at the door, beckoned Lu Junjie to the side, and asked, "Did Brother Tianqing do anything strange these days? Or how was he feeling?" Chapter 793. Lu Junjie shook his head blankly. "No, everything is normal." Lin Wenwen's heart immediately calmed down a little, and she asked again as if to confirm, "Really? Think about it carefully." Lu Junjie looked at her strangely and said, "I've been following the deputy leader, and nothing happened. The deputy leader stayed in the office almost every day and didn't even go back to the dormitory. What could have happened? It's good that you're fine." Lin Wenwen breathed a sigh of relief, then muttered as she turned around and walked away. Lu Junjie was left looking at her with a puzzled look on his face. On the other side, after Lu Tong left, he found Li Honglin. Li Honglin handed him a small glass bottle filled with liquid and said, "Here, this is made from mutant plants. I brought it from Haiqing, and the effects are real." Lu Tong took it and asked hesitantly, "Other than making people unconscious, there shouldn't be any other effects, right?" Li Honglin nodded and said with a confident smile, "Don't worry, it's just a high-strength knockout drug. It depends on who you use it on, and how much you use. For ordinary people, a little bit has a big effect. It's much better than sleeping pills. But for arcanists, it's not very useful. Unless you put a lot of it in." Lu Tong raised the drug in his hand and asked, "Then what level of arcanist can it work on? How long does the drug last?" "As long as it's not a level 7 arcanist, it's effective. Even a level 7 arcanist will lose consciousness for about 10 minutes if they drink it. The lower the level, the longer it will take." "Who are you planning to use it to deal with?" Li Honglin couldn't help but ask as he explained the effects of the medicine. Lu Tong shook his head and said, "It has nothing to do with you." Then he gave the points ticket in his hand to Li Honglin and turned to leave. After entering the base, the contact between them was not so close. They would only look for each other when they needed help. After getting the drug, Lu Tong thought of the woman he had just met. She had changed so much that he almost didn't recognize her at that time. She had short hair, wore a dirty villa combat uniform, and wore military boots. Her whole body exuded a heroic spirit. This image was completely different from her previous image of long hair, clean dress, and stiletto heels. Lu Tong was slightly surprised by the drastic change in the other party. However, Lu Tong was more concerned about the relationship between this woman and Yuan Tianqing. Others might not know, but he knew a little. This was because Lu Tong had been paying close attention to Yuan Tianqing. After all, Yuan Tian was handsome, young, and powerful. He felt that this woman was too stupid. Since she liked Yuan Tianqing so much, why didn't she just attack him directly? What was the point of just watching from the back? That was why he didn't come with Duan Wan and the others, because he didn't know Yuan Tianqing was here. After finding out about it, he thought of ways to persuade Wang Jian, Li Honglin, Lu Hao, and the others to give up on the Netherworld King's base. If he wanted Yuan Tianqing, he would have to use some tricks. After arriving at this new base, Yuan Tianqing might even become the leader in the future after the base developed. If he could get close to him, he wouldn't have to worry about his life in the future. Therefore, he asked Li Honglin to help him get these medicines, and even reluctantly exchanged his points for them. Right now, in this new base, the most valuable thing was points. The points of the base could be exchanged for any item or transaction. As long as you had enough points. The points tickets were printed by the base's government office using a printer and stamped with a mark. Others wanted to fake it, but they couldn't replicate the mark. Lu Tong took the medicine and walked back. Although his heart ached at the loss of those points tickets, he thought about how he would be able to follow Yuan Tianqing in the future. Tomorrow was the day that Yuan Tianqing would go to the construction site. During this time, Lu Tong had already found out about Yuan Tianqing's daily routine. Therefore, he knew that Yuan Tianqing was completely focused on his work. If he wasn't in the office, he would go to the construction site to investigate. He rarely returned to the dormitory. He ate in the office, rested in the office when he was tired, and only returned to the dormitory when he needed to take a shower. As long as Yuan Tianqing went to the construction site, he would have a chance to get close to him. When the sky turned dark, over at the Huaxia base. Because Lu Jinan's ultimate skill had split the ground, the zombies couldn't rush over and everyone had enough time to rest. Over at the thundercloud area, although the sky had darkened, the lightning was still flashing continuously. Boom dash, there were still lightning strikes, but the amount was much less. However, the location of the thundercloud was no longer where it was before. Because of Mo Yan's movement, the thundercloud in the sky also moved. Therefore, wherever Mo Yan and Xikongchen fought, the thundercloud would follow. Wherever the thundercloud went, the ground would turn into a mess of ruins. Bang dash, a figure flew to the side and fell on an old car that was emitting sparks and black smoke. The figure quickly got up with a roll, swung his body on all fours, raised his head, bared his fangs, and roared at the front. Roar! Before he could finish roaring, his hind legs kicked the ground, and he immediately turned into a blur as he dashed forward. What is this zombie emperor's body made of? Why can't it be broken? Gao Haoyun's face was also ferocious, almost the same as the zombie's expression. However, it was missing a face full of purple veins. Hey, you didn't get caught by him, right? Why do I feel like something's wrong with your aura? Wu Qingyue's face was no longer smiling. His handsome face was slightly frowning. Standing on the side, he raised one hand to control the thundercloud and the other hand to track Mo Yan's position. Wherever his fingers went, a few thigh-thick thunderbolts would fall. This zombie emperor has the lightning attribute, your thunderbolts won't have much of an effect on it. Xikongchen said in a low voice. Then he suddenly retreated and threw out a high-temperature fireball. Bang dash, the fireball was thrown out, but Mo Yan's figure reacted quickly and dodged it. The fireball brushed past Mo Yan's body and hit the building behind him. Half of the building, which had already been badly damaged by the explosion, was immediately blown up again. The broken pieces of the wall flew everywhere. The three of them had been fighting with the zombies for an entire afternoon, and now they were in a mess. Only Wu Qingyue's clothes were slightly better than Xikongchen's. Gao Haoyun, who was constantly being attacked by Mo Yan, already had a few burnt areas on his body. His face was covered in dirt, and he looked very messy. Gao Haoyun gritted his teeth, his face was a bit pale in the dark. He weakly replied, "No." But when he said that he didn't, he felt very guilty. Because there was a place on his body that was scratched. Chapter 794. Roar. Mo Yan was in a worse state than Gao Haoyun. His entire body was covered in dust from rolling on the ground, and the fabric of his clothes was torn. There were also many light wounds on his body, all of which were caused by the ice blades and the explosions. However, his flesh had been strengthened to a very tough level, these small wounds did not affect him much. Lin Qiao observed for an entire afternoon, only to see Mo Yan attacking Gao Haoyun like a madman. If Gao Haoyun was not a rank 8 and an ice metahuman, in addition to Wu Qingyue and Xikongchen helping him, Gao Haoyun would have long been dead. Metahumans of the same rank had no chance of winning against a zombie. Not to mention that this was a zombie that had gone berserk. Moreover, Lin Qiao looked at Gao Haoyun's direction, his eyes flashed. The corners of his mouth curled up into a mysterious smile. Wu Qingyue joined the battle because he was suppressed by Mo Yan's thundercloud. Both of them were lightning elementalists, but he lost because of his human physique. On the other hand, this guy obviously did not really want to help. This guy was the same as her, here to join in the fun. He was just bored, so he joined in to have some fun. 3 rank 8 metahumans against a zombie emperor, fighting from morning to night. The long battle had made Sikong Chin and Gao Haoyun very irritable. Although they did not use much of their abilities, they were still unable to truly harm the zombie emperor. This caused both of them to feel suffocated. Sikong Li was still fine, he was a calm and cautious person, so this was not a big deal. On the other hand, Gao Haoyun was a lot more impatient, that was why his attacks and dodging became slower. In addition, Mo Yen had only targeted him, so Gao Haoyun was slowly unable to hold on. That was why when he was careless, Mo Yen scratched his waist. However, he did not dare to let Sikong Li know that he was scratched by the zombie, so he silently used his ability to freeze the wound on his waist. The infection rate of the virus varied from person to person. The higher the level of the ability, the slower the infection. If it was an ordinary zombie, he might be able to hold on for 2 to 3 years, but now it was a zombie emperor that caught him. The virus of the zombie emperor was different. Gao Haoyun didn't know how much longer he could hold on, even though he was using his ability to freeze himself. But from the beginning, he had already felt the tyrannical power of this virus. Therefore, he used a large amount of energy to maintain the area around his waist. Right now, he was no longer in the mood to continue fighting. He wanted to leave as soon as possible and find someone to research an antidote for him. Maybe the technicians in China had the ability. However, he was unwilling to let the zombie emperor go just like that. Just as Gao Haoyun was hesitating, the thunderclouds in the sky suddenly shook violently. Wu Qingyue's body trembled, and then his face stiffened. Blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. He abruptly raised his head and stared at the thunderclouds in the sky. 3 seconds later, he immediately shouted to the 2 men, "Go! The thunderstorm is coming." As he said, the thundercloud above his head was getting bigger and bigger. Because Wu Qingyue had been suppressing the lightning energy inside, it was like a cloud accumulating more and more lightning energy. The area of the dark clouds was getting larger and larger, and the pressure was getting lower and lower. A gust of wind began to blow in the surroundings. Because it was night time, the people didn't feel the change in the dark clouds. They only felt that the wind was getting stronger, and the lightning had become more complex. The accumulated lightning energy caused the energy to shrink, but the power had multiplied. Wu Qingyue frowned and raised his hand to wipe the corner of his mouth, but he didn't say anything else. With a flash, he retreated from the minefield. Bang! Boom! Boom! As soon as Wu Qingyue let go, the thundercloud seemed to crack open, and the lightning inside broke out of the shell and struck down with a deafening sound in the blink of an eye. Roar dash! As if he felt the aura of the thundercloud, Mo Yen jumped to the top of a pile of rubble, opened his arms, and roared ferociously. Sikong Chen and Gao Haoyun's hearts jumped at the same time. A bad premonition arose. Hearing Wu Qingyue's shout, they immediately retreated from the range of the minefield without hesitation. Boom dash! With a loud explosion, Mo Yan's entire body exploded into a ball of lightning. This time, the power of the explosion didn't just create a large pit, but also directly spread out in a circle around Mo Yan's body, bringing with it an oppressive aura. The ball of lightning shot out countless lightning bolts in all directions, turning everything in its path into dust. In the blink of an eye, the entire area was cleared, forming a huge pit. Luckily, the 3 of them dodged quickly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to withstand this terrifying power that could turn everything into dust. Before Wu Qingyue spoke, Lin Qiao had already yelled at Duan Wan and the others, "Run!" Then, he quickly led them out and found a house to hide in. This zombie emperor. Don't tell me it broke through to rank 9. Duanwan's face was a bit pale, obviously affected by the power just now. Shen Yuzhen also looked at Lin Qiao blankly. Her level was too low. She couldn't tell if Mo Yen had leveled up or not, but she instinctively felt a sense of fear. Lin Qiao shook her head. No, this power was borrowed by Mo Yen. This power was borrowed by Mo Yen. This is the power of nature. She looked up at the sky. Paw paw paw, a few large raindrops fell on her face. Boom boom boom, the thunderclouds that Mo Yen had released as power were no longer flashing with lightning. Only a few muffled sounds of thunder and a few flashes of lightning could be heard. Hua hua hua, the sky began to rain. The originally cold weather at night became even colder because of the rain. The temperature dropped, so Duanwan and the others immediately filled their bodies with energy so they wouldn't feel so cold. Seeing that Wu Qingyue and the others were already running towards the China base, Lin Qiao wasn't in a hurry to go back with them. She turned her head to look at Mo Yan's direction and decided to stay and observe Mo Yan's situation. You guys go back to China first, I'll go take a look. Lin Qiao turned and said to Duanwan and the others. Yes. Duanwan and the others didn't say anything, only responding and leaving with Shen Yuzhen. After Lin Qiao watched them leave, he turned around and disappeared from where he stood. After Mo Yen suddenly exploded, he crawled forward and crawled on the ground. He let the rain wash his body and the ground around him. After a while, he slowly climbed up from the muddy ground. He bent his back, arms hanging down, and stood up shakily. The wild aura from before had already disappeared from his body. Not long after, a white shadow and a few other figures flashed and flew to his side. Chapter 795. The female zombie in the white dress appeared next to Mo Yen and quickly put her hand on his arm. A gentle energy was transferred from the female zombie's hand to Mo Yan's body. Although the other zombies appeared, they didn't get too close to Mo Yen. They all stood more than 10 meters away and watched. Mo Yen lowered his head and closed his devilish eyes. His angular face was still full of blood vessels, but in the dark night, it wasn't very obvious. Lin Qiao passed the other zombies and quietly approached Mo Yen. While being vigilant, she curiously looked at Mo Yen. Mo Yan's breath was calm, not as violent as before. It was like a beast resting quietly on the ground, but it wasn't really asleep. The female zombie was quietly healing him. Lin Qiao stood next to her and felt the energy of her ability. She didn't even need to squint her eyes to see the white light. It was like a spring breeze caressing one's face, making one feel very comfortable. There was a slight itch, but also a cool feeling. Not long after, Mo Yen slightly straightened his back and stood up. He raised his head and waved his hand at the female zombie. The female zombie immediately let go of her hand and withdrew her ability. Roar dash! At this time, Mo Yen opened his eyes, a pair of dazzling purple eyes dimmed, he opened his mouth and let out a deep roar. Lin Qiao was stunned when she heard this. She took a few steps back and appeared in front of Mo Yen. She looked at him with a surprised face. Huh? You can feel me. As soon as she appeared, Mo Yen didn't react. The surrounding zombies immediately bared their teeth at Lin Qiao. Roar dash! When the female zombie in the white dress saw Lin Qiao, she immediately flashed behind Mo Yen. Then she revealed half of her head and a pair of black eyes with white light, and roared at Lin Qiao. Why are you all so excited? If I wanted to take care of you, do I need to wait until now? Humph! Lin Qiao coldly snorted at them. And the reaction of the female zombie in the white dress made Lin Qiao inexplicably think of Xiao Xiao, who was still in her space. Roar dash! The zombies didn't appreciate her words and continued to roar at her without changing their expressions. They were like a pack of wolves whose territory had been invaded by an enemy, and their fur was about to explode. Fortunately, none of them were natural animals. Otherwise, he would have seen pairs of ears or tails. Hoo-hoo, all right, it didn't have ears or tail, but it had a pair of huge wings. One of the zombies seemed to be unable to withstand Lin Xiao's pressure and directly transformed into a huge eagle standing on the ground, flapping its large wings. Mo Yen stared at Lin Xiao and roared, "Roar!" Lin Xiao shrugged and said, "Don't worry. I'm just here to watch the fun. I know who you are, and I'm not going to get in your way. Of course, as long as you don't have any ideas about my base." The lines on your face are a little strange." After saying that, Lin Xiao carefully looked at Mo Yan's face. Mo Yan subconsciously raised his hand to point at his face, but it was completely smooth. He didn't feel anything. He knew that when he went berserk, his veins would swell and float. He didn't discover it himself, he asked the female zombie next to him. But after he woke up and let the female zombie heal him, these veins would disappear. Although he had turned into a zombie, he still cared a lot about his face. After all, he was very handsome. Even if he became a zombie, he would still be a super handsome zombie. After hearing Lin Xiao say that, Mo Yen subconsciously looked back at the female zombie with a questioning gaze after touching his face. The female zombie looked at his face and saw that the veins on Mo Yan's face didn't disappear like before. She was a little scared and shrank back. Then she weakly opened her mouth, "Roar." Mo Yan's eyes were obviously stunned, but he didn't care about Lin Xiao anymore. He immediately roared at the zombie next to him. After hearing that, Lin Xiao's mouth slightly twitched. He wanted to laugh, but felt that it was weird. Very quickly, the zombie that was yelled at by Mo Yen turned his backpack forward and reached into it to feel around. He took out a palm-sized mirror and quickly handed it to Mo Yen. Looking at the zombie emperor who kept looking at himself in the mirror in the middle of the night, Lin Xiao's expression was a little speechless. "This scene was a little weird, looks like it's imprinted on your face. I see that it's on your neck, could it be on your whole body?" Lin Xiao looked at Mo Yen who didn't care about anything and only looked at the mirror. Even if there was no light at night, her eyes could clearly see the blood lines on Mo Yan's face. It was like the beautiful lines of lightning flashing across the sky. It was just that Lin Xiao couldn't see what color it was at night because it was very dark. But since the lines were so dark, it was obvious that the color was deep. However, these lines weren't like the blood vessels that swelled up and surfaced on the surface of the skin like a blood net. But now, it was like a tattoo on his body. Although the lines covered his face, the evil and tough charm did not diminish. Instead, because of the lightning-like sharpness in the lines, his face looked more like a work of art. Lin Xiao looked at him for a while and saw that he was still taking pictures. And his expression kept changing, one moment he frowned, the next moment he relaxed, and the corner of his eyes curved with a smile. Why did he look like he couldn't believe his own handsomeness? Lin Xiao couldn't help but want to roll her eyes. "Hey, are you done? Did you ask me to show myself to see you look in the mirror?" Only then did Mo Yen reluctantly pass the mirror to one of his subordinates. He looked at Lin Xiao up and down, and with a puzzled expression, he lightly roared, "Ho!" Lin Xiao said indifferently, "Whatever level you think I am. Is that important?" Mo Yan's expression turned cold, and he continued to roar, "Ho!" Lin Xiao raised her eyebrows and said, "Didn't I just say that I'm here to join in the fun? I don't want to care about you and China Base. Whether it's China Base or Gao Haoyun, it's none of my business how you want to deal with them. As long as you don't provoke me anymore, it's fine. I'm the same as you, I'm not human. Of course, I can't be with humans, but I have to protect my family and friends. I'm not like you, living alone in this apocalypse." When she said this, she stared at Mo Yen. Mo Yan's eyes flashed coldly. Oh. Lin Chao's eyes also flashed coldly. Of course I know who you are, and what you've been through. But so what? We'll mind our own business, it's the others who harmed you, not me. Mo Yen looked at her and didn't say anything. Lin Chao said, as for Gao Haoyun, he's already been caught by your fingernails. Even if you don't chase after him, you can't escape the fate of becoming a zombie. Chapter 796. The reason why Lin Chao dared to appear in front of Mo Yen and negotiate with him was because she saw that the energy in his body had been emptied. Although she didn't have to show herself, he could already sense her existence. In that case, there was no point in her hiding anymore. Lin Chao squinted her eyes and saw that Mo Yan's body was emitting a faint purple light in the dark. But the light was too weak, showing that his body was like a lamp that had run out of oil. As long as he didn't attract the natural thunderclouds from before, Lin Chao wasn't worried that he could cause any harm to her. Moreover, she also saw something even more important, and that was the other party's corpse core. It should be said that the corpse core in Mo Yan's brain was different from before. When they were fighting before, Lin Chao was standing too far away and didn't see it. Now that she got closer, she realized that his corpse core had changed. Last time at the base, it was clearly a light purple corpse core, but now it had turned into a dark purple crystal. The color number had deepened several times, becoming a very deep color. But that wasn't the main point. The main point was that this dark purple crystal's corpse core was full of small cracks. And the female zombie's energy just now was repairing the cracks on the corpse core in his brain. But maybe because the female zombie's level was too low, the energy was too weak. It didn't help much. Lin Chao squinted her eyes and a thought flashed through her mind. Was it because of these cracks that made him crazy? But when she met this guy at the base, the corpse core was clearly fine. Why did it become like this now? This question lingered in Lin Chao's mind. Roar dash, Mo Yen roared at her. But it only brought her back to reality and asked her what she was looking at. Lin Chao opened her slightly squinted eyes and looked at him. Seeing that you didn't kill all the survivors at the Black Dragon base, I'll give you a reminder. Don't rely too much on the power of nature. If it's too big, you won't be able to handle it. Saying that, she took a step back and disappeared in front of Mo Yen and his subordinates. Mo Yen smelled the air around him. His expression was a bit cold. Actually, he didn't know where the female zombie leader was hiding, but he had a feeling that there was a strong one nearby. He didn't expect it to be the female zombie leader. Of course, Mo Yen wasn't referring to the level 5 zombie leader, he was referring to the leader of the new base. Thinking back, he also felt that she was very strange. She was clearly a zombie, but she actually built a human base. What was he trying to do? Now that he heard what she said, he realized that she had built it to protect her family and friends. Even if I become a zombie, there are still people I want to protect and things I want to do. He, on the other hand, had no family to begin with. His best friend, brother, and the person he liked had all betrayed him. Other than revenge, he really did not know what he should do. Now that the revenge was almost over, what was next? Where should he go? Quietly become a handsome zombie. That night, after Long Qingying gently pushed open the door of the dormitory, Lin Wenwen was still sitting on the sofa in the living room, waiting for her to come back. After they moved to the school, Lin Wenwen and Long Qingying lived in a house above the teachers. In fact, only the Lin family, Yuan Tianxing, Chen Yuding, and a few other high-ranking people lived in this building. How is it? Did you find anything? Lin Wenwen saw Long Qingying open the door and immediately stood up to ask her. Long Qingying took out a folded piece of paper and handed it to her, saying expressionlessly, it's a psychic from the second batch of people that came from Hades base a few days ago. Space type. Why do you suddenly want to investigate him? As she spoke, her ordinary but cold and indifferent face revealed some curiosity. They just came back today, and during dinner, this guy dragged her around the base to look for people, but she did not say who she was looking for. After looking for 2 hours, she suddenly pointed at a skinny young man and said that she wanted to investigate him. This person is a bit strange. Lin Wenwen's eyes flashed as he looked at the information Long Qingying gave him. That scene had always been in her mind, it was so clear at that time. It was as if it had really happened. If she did not ask Lu Junjie, there was nothing strange about Yuan Tianqing recently. She really thought that it was something that had already happened. He was wronged once. At that time, there was a man called Chen Hao who wanted to frame him. He even kidnapped Xiao Lu and Tong Tong, preparing to kill them and then create some clues to lead to this person called Lu Tong. However, Xiao Lu and Tong Tong were rescued by the leader, and that Chen Hao was beaten to death by your sister-in-law. Long Qingying's face was expressionless as she told her about Lu Tong. What? Someone actually dared to touch our family Xiao Lu. He deserved to be beaten to death by sister-in-law. Lin Wenwen heard this and immediately raised his head in shock and anger. Long Qingying nodded and said, although this Lu Tong was innocent at that time, I heard that he and Chen Hao were in the same group before coming to our base. I didn't expect that they would immediately start killing each other after coming in. That Chen Hao is not a good person, obviously this Lu Tong is not a good person either. Speaking up to here, Long Qingying's originally expressionless face became a little cold. I heard that this group of people originally came from Hades base together, but halfway through, they had a disagreement. Paranormals were divided into one group, and ordinary people were divided into another group. Moreover, this Lu Tong had the idea to let Chen Hao and the others capture ordinary people to use as bait to lure zombies. Using ordinary people as bait. He looked weak, as if he could be blown away by the wind. I didn't expect that he would do such a thing. Lin Wenwen frowned, his eyes showed that he was very disgusted with this kind of person. As if thinking of something, Lin Wenwen asked again, then what is his relationship with Brother Tianqing? Have they ever been in contact? Long Qingying shook her head. He hasn't been in contact with Deputy Leader Yuan, but these few days, he has been secretly asking about Leader Yuan Ba. If it wasn't for you suddenly asking me to investigate him, I don't think anyone would have noticed this. Is it because of this that you want me to investigate? Saying that, she looked at Lin Wenwen as if she had understood something. He really wants to use Brother Tianqing. When Lin Wenwen heard Long Qingying say that this Lu Tong was secretly asking about Yuan Tianqing, he thought about the scene that appeared in his mind when he first met Lu Tong. His expression immediately changed, and he immediately gritted his teeth. I have already asked people to continue to keep an eye on him. If there is any movement, I will tell you. Oh, I also heard that he went to meet someone today, also from this batch of paranormals from Hades base. I think we should also pay attention to this person. Long Qingying thought about it and said. Chapter 797. The next day, Lin Wenwen gets up early and goes to her mother's room. After the kidnapping of Lin Xiaolu and Tong Tong, Mrs. Lin doesn't dare to be careless with her baby granddaughter anymore. Even if Lin Feng comes back, she has to keep an eye on Lin Xiaolu and find several bodyguards for her. Qian Xiaoai, who looked delicate but was tall and bald, was the team leader responsible for protecting Lin Xiaolu. Lin Wenwen doesn't keep an eye on Yuan Tianqing directly. She knows that Yuan Tianqing will go to the construction site this afternoon. But he will stay in the office in the morning and work hard. She asks Long Qingying to keep an eye on Lu Tong and see what he is doing. Since Lu Tong wants Yuan Tianqing and secretly asks about him, he will try to contact Yuan Tianqing if he knows that Yuan Tianqing will go to the construction site this afternoon. On the other side, Lu Tong goes to the construction site early in the morning. Although he is a space superpower, he is also a man. The work on the construction site is a bit hard, but he can still do some work. Because working on the construction site, there is food and rice or noodles. More importantly, there are points to get. So even if Lu Tong doesn't want to do heavy work, he has to work on the construction site when he first joined the base. When there is a chance, he will find a way to join some corpse hunting team or go on a mission with the army. After only an hour, someone cares about Lu Tong and asks him to rest. Lu Tong, are you tired? If you are tired, go and have a rest. Lu Tong has been working hard on the construction site these days in order to leave a good impression and arouse people's sympathy. He has put a lot of effort into it. There are ordinary people and superpowers among the workers around him. Lu Tong is a thin young man with a handsome face, but he is eager to do everything. He is not afraid of hard work or tiredness, and he often brings water or helps them. It is obvious that doing heavy work is hard, but he can persist. They all think that this young man is good, but he is too thin and looks a little pale. They are afraid that he can't bear the heavy work on the construction site. It's okay. I can still hold on for a while. Lu Tong took the shovel and shoveled the cement into the iron bucket that was going to be hung high up. At the same time, he turned around and said with a humble smile. His face was covered with sweat. Although his face was pale, he forced himself to endure it and said, "Then come over and drink some water before you finish. This job can't be rushed. Don't ruin your body. Look at your small body being tormented by you. Even if you don't feel heartache, we all feel heartache for you." An uncle laughed loudly. A hint of impatience flashed through Lu Tong's heart, but she still pretended to be indifferent and shook her head. "No, I'm fine." His face was really pale. In fact, Lu Tong was also feeling very uncomfortable. Because he didn't sleep at all last night and forced himself to come to work today. Just for an all-nighter and a morning of hard work. In the afternoon, he would be able to carry out his plan. Therefore, even though his body was a little uncomfortable, he forced himself to endure it. His mood also became agitated. But on the surface, he pretended that he didn't care. It wasn't until the afternoon that the surrounding management staff became a little nervous and active. When Lu Tong saw this, he immediately knew that Yuan Tianqing was coming. He immediately walked to the side of another elevated platform and knocked on the metal frame. A worker on the metal frame lowered his head and looked at him. The two of them looked at each other. Then, Lu Tong nodded lightly, and the worker also nodded. Then, Lu Tong climbed up the elevated platform. Yuan Tianqing appeared together with Qin Yuding. Behind them, Lu Junjie and the others walked to the construction site. They wore safety helmets on their heads. The two of them looked up at the progress of the surrounding construction as they chatted. "Now that there are more people, I think it should be done in about 10 days. Are you sure how big the area on that side is? Has the leader confirmed it?" Qin Yuding asked Yuan Tianqing. The side he was talking about was, of course, the other side of the base. Back then, Lin Qiao said that the base was divided into two parts, yin and yang. Now, the human side of the yang side was almost completed. There was still a small gap in the wall before the base on this side was completely completed. After this side was completed, they still had to build the other side. Yuan Tianqing nodded. Yes, the leader has confirmed it before he left. The two of them looked at the blueprints in their hands as they walked and asked the staff next to them. Just then, a cry suddenly sounded from the top left of the two of them. "Be careful." "Ah-hoo!" Everyone was shocked and subconsciously turned their heads to look. They saw Lu Tong lying on the side of the shelf, reaching out to grab a person who had fallen outside the shelf. The man was hanging outside the shelf and was also holding Lu Tong's hand. He looked very panicked and was shouting, "Help!" This was because the other party was a man who weighed more than 50 kilograms, while Lu Tong was not tall and was very thin. Therefore, he grabbed the man and hung on the shelf. He used too much force, causing the veins on his face to pop. His originally delicate face became somewhat ferocious. "Danger! Hurry up and save him!" Someone shouted loudly. Yuan Tianqing's expression immediately froze. He immediately reached out and saw a soil platform rise from the ground under the man who was hanging outside the shelf. Soon, the man was lifted up. The man climbed up the shelf in a panic. Lu Tong's face was covered in sweat as he helped him squat by the side. "All right, he's fine." However, just as he said that, Lu Tong's eyes rolled slightly. He swayed and fell to the side. The man had just calmed down slightly when he saw Lu Tong suddenly fall. He was shocked again. "Ah! Ah! Lu Tong!" At this moment, the staff on the ground who had been shocked by the false alarm immediately heard the man shouting again. "Captain, Lu Tong has fainted. Hurry, hurry up and help." After a flurry of getting the man down, Yuan Tianqing and Chen Yuding walked over. They looked at Lu Tong's delicate and handsome face, but it was as pale as a sheet of paper. There was a thin layer of sweat on his forehead and the tip of his nose. "How is he?" They looked at the fainted Lu Tong and his pale lips. Yuan Tianqing frowned slightly and asked, "This? I don't know. Maybe he's too tired. He's done a lot of heavy work recently. Also, he was frightened just now and almost fell down while pulling me. Maybe his body couldn't take it anymore, so he fainted." At this moment, the man who was saved by Yuan Tianqing with the soil platform said with a panicked expression. Yuan Tianqing looked at Lu Tong's pale face with his eyes closed and didn't say anything. Chen Yuding, who was beside him, immediately said, "Hurry up and send him to the medical department." "What are you waiting for?" "Yes." The staff in charge immediately carried the man away in a flurry. Meanwhile, Yuan Tianqing and Chen Yuding continued to survey the construction site. They weren't affected by this incident. In an inconspicuous corner not far away, Lin Wenwen watched this scene quietly. Then, she watched as Lu Tong was carried away. Her eyes flickered slightly, then she turned and left. Chapter 798. Lin Wenwen felt that after the apocalypse, she was a woman and liked men. But now, her love rival was not a woman, but a man. And now it seemed that the other party was a person who liked to play tricks. No one noticed how Lu Tong and the man got into an accident, but Lin Wenwen saw it. Because before Yuan Tianqing appeared, she had been secretly watching Lu Tong. She saw that the two of them were originally standing below the shelf, but when Yuan Tianqing and Chen Yuding appeared from afar, they immediately climbed up the shelf. Then, as if they had an agreement, one pretended to fall out, and the other held the other's hand tightly. It was a good show. If she hadn't been watching them from the beginning, she wouldn't have known it was an act. In the end, Lu Tong fainted like a demon, although he didn't directly faint in Yuan Tianqing's arms. But the effect was enough to attract Yuan Tianqing's attention and make Yuan Tianqing remember his face. Did he put in so much effort to put on this show just to leave a good impression on Yuan Tianqing so that he could remember him? Lin Wenwen rubbed her chin gently, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. It seemed that Lu Tong wasn't in a hurry, and the first step was considered a success. Now it was time to see how he would do the second and third steps, and then how he would get Yuan Tianqing on the bed. Although Lin Wenwen knew Lu Tong's intention, she couldn't tell Yuan Tianqing directly. Because such an action would only make Yuan Tianqing think that she was being paranoid. Before she had concrete evidence, she might be seen as being unreasonable. On one hand, she didn't want Yuan Tianqing to hate her, and on the other hand, she wanted to know what Lu Tong was up to. Lin Wenwen decided to continue watching Lu Tong in secret. Before she had enough evidence, Lin Wenwen wouldn't act rashly. Of course, for Yuan Tianqing's chastity, she had to watch Lu Tong. Moreover, Lin Wenwen already had some uncertain thoughts about that scene. Although she now knew that Lu Tong had bad intentions towards Yuan Tianqing, Lin Wenwen didn't believe that Yuan Tianqing would be easily knocked out by Lu Tong in that strange little room. So while she was watching Lu Tong, she had to verify her own thoughts. Did she awaken another kind of ability? As for the Huaxia base, Lin Qiao returned to the Huaxia base and continued to watch the show. After Xikong Qin and the other two returned, they rested for a night and immediately held a meeting in the command room the next day. When they returned last night, everyone received news that the three of them did not manage to kill the zombie emperor. Everyone was slightly taken aback by this news, and they were puzzled. 3 rank 8 metahumans could not even kill a rank 8 zombie emperor. Was it because something had happened? Or was a level 8 zombie emperor really that powerful? Thus, on the second day of the meeting, everyone looked at Xikong Chen's group with curiosity and anticipation. On the other hand, Xikong Chen and Gao Haoyun's faces were extremely gloomy. Wu Qingyue's gentle and handsome face still carried an unchanging smile, making it hard for people to tell what he was thinking. Tell me, what's going on? Just how strong was the zombie emperor? The three of you have been fighting for so long, yet you still haven't defeated the other party, Lan Lu asked curiously as he looked at Xikong Chen's cold face. The moment he asked, Xikong Chen's cold and stern face darkened even more. He pursed his lips, and a dark light flickered in his eyes, but he did not speak. Gao Haoyun's face and lips were slightly pale, and his expression was also very unsightly. His face seemed to be holding back something, but it was concealed by his expressionless face. Seeing that Xikong Qin did not speak, he said, "You have to ask Xi City's leader Wu." After saying that, he looked at Wu Qingyue with dissatisfaction. It was because of Wu Qingyue's actions that caused him to be beaten up so badly by the zombie emperor. If Wu Qingyue could suppress the lightning in the sky, he would not have fallen to this state. He was even scratched by the zombie emperor. After Gao Haoyun returned last night, he did not sleep at all. He immediately went to look for a virus researcher in Huaxia base, hid his identity, and used his powerful strength to threaten the researcher to research an antidote for the virus in his body. Because the experimental zombie had killed a group of experienced researchers, the technical level of the people behind them had greatly decreased. If they could research an antidote for the virus, they would have done it long ago. There was no need to wait until now. Therefore, in order to use his ability to suppress the virus in his body, Gao Haoyun did not sleep for the entire night. Not to mention that he did not sleep last night, he would not be able to sleep in the future. This was because he needed to be awake in order to suppress the virus in his body. If he were to fall asleep, his control over the virus would be slightly loosened, and the overbearing zombie virus would immediately erupt, quickly spreading to every corner of his body. Although Gao Haoyun did not have any strange reactions after a night of not sleeping, other than his pale face and pale lips, everything else was normal. Other than Lin Qiao, no one else knew that he had the zombie virus in his body. Wu Qingyue did not react to Gao Haoyun pointing his gun at him, but his expression did not change, and he still said with a smile, "I had no choice, that was a natural thundercloud. It was not created by the zombie emperor, so I could only temporarily suppress the lightning energy on the thundercloud. But as you can see, the more I suppress it, the more energy it accumulates, and in the end, it was triggered by the zombie emperor. I had no choice." Then why didn't you directly cut off the connection between the zombie emperor and the thundercloud? If you cut off this connection, wouldn't the zombie emperor not be able to trigger the lightning on the thundercloud? Gao Haoyun stared at Wu Qingyue with a sinister expression. Looking at Wu Qingyue's handsome face, he felt that he was an eyesore. If you have the ability, then go ahead. In any case, I don't have the ability. Although I also have the lightning attribute, my energy is weaker than the zombie emperor. Moreover, you also saw the state of the zombie emperor, it was going berserk. When the zombie emperor went berserk, the energy released from its body was so explosive. If I directly rushed over and cut off the connection between it and the thundercloud, I would only be repelled. Moreover, I had suppressed most of the lightning energy, and the two of you combined couldn't even kill a single zombie emperor. Are you blaming me? Wu Qingyue's smile turned cold, and then he shrugged his shoulders and said. Wu Qingyue naturally could not accept Gao Haoyun's words of trying to push the blame onto him. Moreover, he did use his full strength at that time, although it looked like he was slacking off. If he did not suppress the energy of the thundercloud, they would not have been able to deal with the zombie emperor so easily. Chapter 799. Looks like this zombie emperor is really hard to deal with. Before Gao Haoyun could reply, Lan Lu immediately interrupted with an irrelevant comment. Then he looked at Xikong Chen and asked, "What do you think, Leader Xikong?" Xikong Chen's face was expressionless, but his eyes were deep. After seeing Lan Lu's gaze, he was silent for a few seconds before saying, "This zombie emperor seems to have gone berserk, and its energy seems to have risen to another level. Although we haven't met any other zombie emperors, this lightning-type zombie seems to have surpassed the standard of ordinary zombie emperors." His meaning was clear. It wasn't that Wu Qingyue was willing to go, but that he couldn't suppress the zombie emperor, so he had no choice but to go. This is a berserk zombie emperor. Will its lethality increase by another level? Then how can we avoid its lethality when it's awake? Is there a way to prevent it from going berserk? Miss Lu, what do you think? Lan Lu said as if he was treating the zombie emperor like a mad dog. Then, he pulled Lin Xiao, who was trying her best to be a pretty face, down with a smile on her face. Lin Xiao glanced at him coldly. Couldn't he just let her watch the show quietly? Ever since this guy came, he had been looking at her with unknown intentions. Now he was pulling her out. Did he want her to expose herself? After throwing a cold glance at Lan Lu, she swept her gaze over the crowd. Sure enough, everyone's gazes were directed at her. Xikong Chen and the other two were a little confused and doubtful, while the others looked at Lin Xiao with anticipation and thought. After all, Lin Xiao had left the city wall. Besides Lan Lu, Lu Jinan, Hong Yijie, and the others also noticed. Therefore, they all thought that this woman had gone to watch the battle. Why are you asking me? I don't know much about the zombie emperor, so what can I think? I thought that with the three of us, we would be able to take care of the zombie emperor. I didn't think that I would underestimate it. How about you join us next time? Maybe your spirit type will be useful against the zombie emperor. Why don't you try? Lin Xiao calmly threw the question back at him. She had only said that she had underestimated the zombie emperor, but she had subconsciously said that she had overestimated Xikong Chen and the others. Everyone present could hear the surface and underlying meaning, but no one dared to point it out. Because they were all leaders, they were not stupid enough to point out Lin Xiao's intentions. Xikong Chen's words were clearly directed at the zombie emperor. If they were to point it out, it would immediately turn into disdain towards the strength of Xikong Chen's trio. Hearing Lin Xiao's words, Xikong Chen and Gao Haoyun's eyes flickered as they looked at the blue continent. Although he wasn't very sure of Lin Xiao's words, it was still a feasible method. The smile on Lan Lu's face stiffened a little, but it quickly returned to normal. Without changing his expression, he said, "If you need help, of course I'm willing to help." As for whether or not it would work, that was hard to say. After all, the mind of zombies isn't as complicated as that of humans. How would you know if you don't try? Don't you think that zombies are easy to kill because they are simple-minded? Could it be that you haven't used your ability on zombies before? Or are you saying that you only use it to deal with humans? Lin Qiao stared at him with a cold glint in her eyes and said with an indifferent smile. "Well, actually, I'm also curious. I think that Miss Lu's words are very likely. My subordinate has just awakened a spiritual-type psychic and has not participated in a combat mission. I wonder if it would work on zombies. Maybe we can let her try it when we get back." Seeing that Lin Qiao and Lan Lu were already exchanging a few words, Wu Qingyue felt a little jealous and interjected. Of course, what he said about a newly awakened psychic was all false. Mo Li was already a level 6 spiritual-type psychic. But when she went on a mission, she really didn't participate in any combat and usually stayed in the logistics department. Mo Li was Dr. Liang Dashu's assistant. Although she was an assistant, the two had worked together for a few years. Liang Dashu had always treated her like a student. Aside from virus research, he had also taught her everything in terms of medical treatment. Mo Li's ability wasn't weak to begin with. Plus, after awakening her spiritual-type psychic, her thinking was many times more active than ordinary people. So, she basically knew all of Liang Dashu's skills. So after Liang Dashu passed away, Mo Li took over all of Liang Dashu's work, including medical treatment. When she went on a mission with Wu Qingyue, she would act as a battlefield doctor in the logistics department. But Mo Li's ability was effective on zombies. It was just that Wu Qingyue was on Lin Qiao's side, so he didn't say it out loud. At the same time, he used Lin Qiao's words to stab Lan Lu in the back. "TSK tisk TSK, you haven't even gotten your hands on her yet and you're already so brazenly protecting her. Is it really okay for you to be like this? You will make us old dogs jealous." Lan Lu looked at Wu Qingyue and then laughed helplessly. It looked like he was joking, but it was obvious that he wanted to change the topic. Old dogs, of course, were referring to the group of old single dogs. Originally, the people present were all scheming people. It was impossible for Lan Lu to change the topic so easily. But there was someone here who liked to scheme and not care about the big picture. Gao Haoyun looked at Lin Qiao with a greedy look in his eyes. But he quickly hid it and looked at Wu Qingyue with even more dissatisfaction and coldness. He glanced at Wu Qingyue and then suddenly smiled ambiguously and said to Lin Qiao, "That's right, looking at Miss Lu's attitude towards Leader Wu, I think I have a higher chance." Or perhaps Miss Lu actually liked tall, strong men who gave her a sense of security. Am I right? He was obviously hinting that Wu Qingyue was too thin and not as tall as him, so he couldn't give Lin Qiao the sense of security she needed. On the other hand, he was hinting that Wu Qingyue might not be able to satisfy Lin Qiao in bed. After all, Wu Qingyue did look shorter than Gao Haoyun, and his body was slightly thinner. But Lin Qiao had seen Wu Qingyue's skinny body when he wore clothes, but when he took them off, he had a muscular body. As for the other aspect of his ability, she really didn't want to try it again. Thinking back to the time when she was tricked by Little Man in the spatial lake, Wu Qingyue's bravery and strength gave Lin Qiao quite a bit of psychological resistance. But at this time, Lin Qiao only wanted to throw one word at Gao Haoyun, idiot. He actually followed up Lan Lu's words and led the topic to her. "What the hell are you doing here? It's fine if you want to get rid of the zombie emperor, but why don't you think about how to deal with the virus in your body? You're about to die, but you still have the leisure to tease me. If he isn't an idiot, then what is?" Chapter 800. Hearing Gao Haoyun's ambiguous words, a cold light flashed in Wu Qingyue's eyes. He glanced at Lin Qiao, but did not speak immediately. He felt that if he opened his mouth at this time, it might make this female zombie even more unhappy with him. Sure enough, before he opened his mouth, the female zombie sneered and retorted, "I also don't like people who look good but are useless. You can't even protect your own base and can only protect yourself by hiding in someone else's base. How dare you say such things here? What's the use of being tall and strong? You can't even protect your own base and run to someone else's base for protection, so what if you have a rank 8 ability? Isn't it still useless?" Gao Haoyun's face darkened, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He looked at Lin Qiao with a hint of murderous intent. This woman dared to mock him in front of so many base leaders, saying that he looked good but was useless. Gao Haoyun immediately became angry, his face instantly became gloomy. Without waiting for him to speak, Lin Qiao continued with a sneer, "What? Did I say something wrong? Why don't everyone talk about it? The Black Dragon base has a lot of people, and the number of ability users is also not small. When everyone clearly still had the ability to fight, as the strongest person in the Black Dragon base, the rank 8 ice ability user, was the first to escape in a helicopter. I never knew that the leader of the Black Dragon base, Gao Haoyun, was such a coward." After her 2 calls, everyone's gazes at Gao Haoyun and Lin Qiao became more interested. Gao Haoyun was indeed a rank 8 ability user, other than Xikong Qin, Wu Qingyue, and Lan Lu, whose strength was unknown. No one else was his opponent. But what Lin Qiao said was also right. Gao Haoyun did not think about how to break through when the Black Dragon base was besieged. He did not even make a move and directly escaped in a helicopter. This kind of personality was indeed a bit cowardly, causing others to look down on him. Now everyone felt that even if Du Kuanqing's personality was a bit dark, and his methods were a bit shady, but he had been guarding the Black Dragon base until now, and also protected the lives of so many survivors. Everyone clearly felt that Du Kuanqing's courage and strategy was more suitable to be a leader than Gao Haoyun. "You shut up." Gao Haoyun finally gritted his teeth. He stared fiercely at Lin Qiao and the killing intent in his eyes could not be concealed. "Pft, what? You dare to do it, but don't dare to admit it." Lin Qiao sneered and looked back at Gao Haoyun without fear. When the others saw that Gao Haoyun was crushed by Lin Qiao's words, they all looked at Lin Qiao in surprise. He then turned to look at Xikong Qin, wanting to know what he was thinking. Xikong Qin sat expressionlessly, his eyes a little dark. But he obviously didn't want to speak now, so he kept his mouth shut. "All right, the most important thing right now is to deal with this zombie emperor." It had only been 6 years and there were already zombie emperors. It wouldn't be long before the number of zombie emperors increased as well. At that time, all the survivor bases will be in more danger. At this time, Wu Qingyue immediately opened his mouth and forcefully changed the topic. "Tisk, what do you think the zombie emperor is? You think you can just casually appear?" Gao Haoyun sneered as he looked at Wu Qingyue. His eyes showed that he did not believe Wu Qingyue's words at all. "Well, as far as I know. Right now, there were already a lot of second-rank kings at the 7th rank. Who knew when one of them would successfully break through? That's really possible," Lan Lu said with a smile as he continued, "Plus, there are quite a few second-rank kings around this zombie emperor. Their combined destructive power is not any less than that of a zombie emperor." As he spoke, he looked at Xikong Qin, because the 3 of them had already met the zombie emperor. They should also know about the situation of the second-rank kings around the zombie emperor. One second-rank king might be easy to deal with, but if there were several of them together, it was just as Lan Lu said, it would not be that easy to deal with. Sikong Chen was also racking his brains, but he did not know how to deal with the zombie emperor. Especially now that he had fought with the zombie emperor, he had seen how powerful it was. Thinking about it now, the previous plan did not work at all. Even Sikong Li could not do anything, let alone the strength of others. The humans could not think of any way to deal with the zombie emperor. On the other hand, after Mo Yen suddenly emptied his body of energy, he entered a very weak state. This was not referring to his body being weak, but his zombie core being weak. Mo Yen felt that his zombie core could no longer store energy. Ever since the battle with the three humans, the energy he absorbed from the zombie core could not be stored in his zombie core. They were all sucked in and then slowly exhaled. Since his zombie core could no longer store energy, he could no longer use his abilities. Therefore, the current Mo Yen was like an ordinary zombie without abilities. He only had the aura and pressure of a level 8 zombie emperor, but no martial power. Roar dash, get out. Don't come near me. At this moment, Mo Yen had locked himself in a room and was yelling at his underlings outside. The weakening of his strength made him feel a great sense of crisis, and it wasn't just toward outsiders. Not only to his subordinates, but also to his subordinates. If they knew that he could not beat them, they might turn around and attack him. Even if they followed him for a long time, these zombies did not have emotions. If it was not for Mo Yen using his powerful martial power to suppress them, they would have run away long ago. If they knew that they couldn't beat them now, these zombies would probably rebel immediately. After Mo Yen roared, the surrounding zombies all stayed tens of meters away from the room he was in. Although they were confused as to why their boss wanted them to stay away, they did not find anything wrong with Mo Yen. Roar dash, go, lead the zombies to attack. You guys take the lead and attack. At this time, Mo Yen roared again and ordered. The 5 level 2 kings looked at each other from a distance of more than 10 meters. After hesitating for a few seconds, they all left. At the same time, the people in China's base had temporarily ended the meeting and returned to their own places to rest. As soon as Lin Qiao came out of the meeting room, she was stopped by a figure. Gao Haoyun's originally masculine face was now covered with a haze. He stared at her eyes and said, "Woman, just you wait. I will let you know if I have the ability or not. At least in bed, I can fuck you to death." After saying that, his eyes swept up and down Lin Qiao's body, then he turned around and left with an evil smile. Lin Qiao's expression did not change as he watched him leave, then he calmly continued to walk towards his temporary resting room. Wu Qingyue, who had just walked out with Lan Lu, looked at Gao Haoyun's back with a smile on his face, but his eyes flashed with coldness. Then he looked at Lin Qiao and withdrew his gaze. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.